Fall River City Council public hearing will now be called to order. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilors Kadim?
Here.
Dion?
Here.
Kilby?
Here.
Lullaby LeBeau? Lee?
Here.
Peckham?
Here.
Pelletier?
Here.
Pereira?
Here.
And President Ponti.
Here, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Good evening. We are before us here today is our public hearings for the fiscal year 2022 municipal budget. That is before us this evening, just for the community to be aware, those who are watching at home and paying close attention. Where we're at with this budget process here tonight is we are required by city charter to have and conclude a public hearing for the municipal budget. That's taking place right now at 5:15. Following that, we'll be having our regular public hearings as scheduled on our agenda. After that is completed, we're going to be having our Committee on Finance meeting that will begin, and we will be having the presentation of the municipal budget by the city, followed by the school department. Tonight, we won't be asking municipal questions with respect to the municipal budget. We will be able to ask the school department with the superintendent and his team the school department questions, any questions you have pertaining to the school department. Starting next Tuesday, we have already prepared an agenda where we've scheduled specific department heads to come down before us at given times. Some will run over into other nights and others won't. We begin that next Tuesday following, and next Wednesday as well. Is that correct? Next Tuesday and Wednesday? And then as scheduled the following week as well. And we've already prepared that schedule so everybody's aware of what department heads are going to be here and which department heads will not be here on specific nights. With that being said, at this time, is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open. Second.
Second.
Motion to open the public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 municipal budget has been made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Is there any proponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all proponents. Madam Clerk, any written proponents?
No, Mr. President.
Hearing none. Is there any opponents wishing to speak on this specific topic? Calling all proponents. Hearing none. Is there any written proponents or opponents, Madam Clerk?
We have neither, Mr. President.
Hearing none. Is there a motion to close our public hearing?
Motion so made.
Motion made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Kilby. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. We will begin our full public hearings at 5:55. We are adjourned. Is there a motion to adjourn made by Councilor Kadim, seconded by Councilor Peckham? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Fall River City Council public hearing will now be called to order. Madam Clerk.
Councilors Kadim?
Here.
Dion?
Here.
Kilby? Here. Lullaby LeBeau? Here. Lee?
Here.
Peckham?
Here.
Pelletier?
Here.
Pereira?
Here.
And President Ponti.
Here, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. It is 5:57. We are going to be doing the first part of our agenda this evening is our public hearings. And the first item before us, Massachusetts Electric Company. Is there a motion to open? Motion made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion to open the hearing is followed by Massachusetts Electric Company for one pole location as follows. The petitioner requests to install a new pole on Greenleaf Street approximately 100 feet from pole number 3 on Judge Street. Pole is needed to reduce slack in the current span of the primary conductor. This will prevent span from hitting trees during wind events and reduce outages from Greenleaf and Judge Street areas in accordance with plan number 30378-724 dated May 15, 2021. Is there any proponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all proponents. Madam Clerk, any written?
No, Mr. President. We have none.
Any opponents? Calling all opponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all opponents. Hearing none. Madam Clerk, any written?
No, Mr. President.
Motion to close the hearing's been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 2, the Massachusetts Electric Company for one pole location as follows. Motion to open made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Kilby. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The petitioner is requesting to install a new pole on Ling Street, approximately 65 feet from pole number 6, located on Terry Marie Way. Pole is needed to supply electrical power to a new home on 67 Ling Street, and according to plan number 303-67254, dated May 15, 2021. Is there any proponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all proponents. Hearing none, Madam Clerk, any written proponents?
No, Mr.
Hearing none, any opponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all opponents. Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
None.
Hearing no further proponents or opponents, is there a motion to
Motion
close?
so made.
Made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Kadim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item 3, Paula Olivera of 307 Plain Street. Motion to open made by Councilor Lee, seconded by Councilor Peckham. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Paula Olivera of 307 Plain Street, Rehoboth, Mass., for the removal of curbing as follows. Of 43 to 45 Ash Street, the petitioner is requesting the removal of 28 feet of curbing for the purposes of creating a 3-car driveway on the south side of the home to alleviate the demand for on-street parking. Motion to open has been made and seconded and already passed. Calling all proponents wishing to speak on this item, calling all proponents. Hearing none, is there any opponents wishing to speak on this item, calling all opponents? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, any written proponents or opponents to be
No.
heard? Hearing none, motion to close, made by
Motion.
Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Pelletier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Marcella Reposo III, 173 Stafford Road. Motion to open the hearing.
Motion so made.
Made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Kilby. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Marcelo Reposo III, 173 Stafford Road, for the removal of curbing as follows. The petitioner is requesting the removal of 8 feet of curbing to the existing 15-foot driveway, opening for the purposes of creating a wider driveway to allow vehicles access to the businesses in the rear of the property. Is there any proponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all proponents. Hearing none, is there any opponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all opponents. Hearing none. Madam Clerk, any written?
No, Mr.
Hearing no written proponents or no proponents or opponents here, motion to close has been
Motion.
made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Kadim. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 5 is Sarah Rodericks of 333 Dunbar Street for the removing of curbing as follows. Motion to open,
Motion
made
so
by
made.
Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Lee. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Sarah Rodericks of 333 Dunbar Street for the removal of curbing as follows. The petitioner is requesting the removal of 13 feet of curbing north on the existing 13-foot driveway opening for the purposes of creating a 2-car driveway and alleviating the demand for on-street parking. Is there any proponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all proponents. Hearing none, is there any opponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all opponents. Hearing none, Madam Clerk, any written proponents or opponents?
No, Mr. President.
Hearing none, motion to close has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item 6, Matthew Maderas, 316 Gifford Road, Westport. Motion to open the hearing
Motion
has been
open.
made by Councilor Dion, seconded by Councilor Peckham. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Matthew Maderas of 316 Gifford Road, Westport, for the removal of a curbing as follows. At 33 to 35 Ward Street, the petitioner is requesting the removal of 16 feet of curbing to the existing 11-foot driveway opening for the purposes of creating an additional driveway on the south side of the multifamily home to allow for a 2-car driveway to alleviate the demand for on-street parking. The current driveway is on the north side of the multifamily home. Is there any proponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all proponents. Hearing none. Is there any opponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all opponents. Hearing none, Madam Clerk, we have a written opponent that has been filed on this, correct?
Correct.
If you'd like to indicate that for the record.
Yes. We have a written objection filed by the neighbor at 23 Ward Street. Did you want me to read the objection?
Is it, yes, you can, please. It's appropriate to know now.
I'm writing on behalf of my mother, Connie Rigo, who owns the property at 2325 Ward Street. I am the occupant of the second floor labeled as 25 Ward Street. We received a notice from this office that the owner of 33-35 Ward Street, Matthew Maderas, would like to remove curbing to create an additional driveway. We have some questions regarding this matter and would like them to be answered before this is approved. It's not clear from the description exactly what this new driveway will look like. It sounds as if he would like all curbing in front of the property removed. Why would 16 feet of curb need to be removed to create an additional driveway on the south side of the property? Is this a wraparound driveway? Is it a two-car horizontal or vertical driveway? It would be nice to see a rendering of the proposed change, as it would drastically alter the look of the property and as such, the neighboring area and property values. Will the removal of curbing affect any of the trees on the side of the street? I would object to any such alteration. The notice states that the owner would like to add a two-car garage to alleviate the demand for on-street parking. I have attached a picture of how this street looked this morning. As you can see, there's ample parking. In the 40-plus years that my mother has owned this house and the 20 years that I have resided here, there has never been an issue with parking on the street. Mr. Maderas has owned the house for less than a year, and in that time, I've only noticed a parking issue when he was rehabilitating the first-floor apartment. After the work was complete, the issue was resolved. I would like more information about this project, so at this time, I object to the approval of this request. I find it to be rather vague. Thank you. Please let me know if you need additional information.
I know there does some, probably some need to refer to Public Works and Transportation. That wouldn't be appropriate here in public hearings. We'll get that on the full council agenda when and I'll remind everybody that the objection was raised, okay? Hearing any other opponents, Madam Clerk?
No others, Mr. President.
No other opponents. Hearing no further proponents or opponents on this matter, is there a motion to close? Made by
Motion.
Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Eugene Merrithew, maybe? A motion to open the hearing?
Motion.
Motion made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Eugene Merrithew of 176 Charles Street for the removal of curbing as follows. The petitioner is requesting the removal of 12 feet of curbing to the existing 15-foot driveway opening for the purpose of creating additional driveway on the east side of the home to allow for additional parking. The current driveway is on the west side of the home. Any proponents wishing to speak on this item, calling all proponents? Hearing none. Any opponents wishing to speak on this item, calling all opponents? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, any then written?
None.
Hearing no further proponents or opponents, motion to close, made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item 8, Todd Piva, 180 Stetson Street. Motion to open the hearing has
Motion.
been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Todd Piva, 180 Stetson Street, for the removal of curbing as follows. The petitioner is requesting the removal of 16 feet of curbing to the existing 18-foot driveway opening on the Summerfield Street side of the property, which is a corner lot. Any proponents wishing to speak on this item, calling all proponents? You can go right down to the microphone and just state your name and address for the record, please.
Todd Piva, 180 Stetson Street, Fall River, Massachusetts.
And would you like to speak on it?
No, I just want to put in a driveway on the inside of my garage toward the center of the property. And I'm taking one space at 16 foot, but I'm taking two vehicles off the street, mine and my girlfriend's. So I don't know if that means
Thank you
anything.
for that. Just so you know, Mr. Piva, we won't be voting on this until later on in the night.
Okay.
You're happy to stay, but I just didn't want you to expect, where we're at right now is a public hearing. We just hear proponents and opponents. And then later on in the evening tonight, we'll be approving it or denying it, whatever the council feels that's need is on this. So I just wanted you to be aware. The
Okay,
clerk's office
thank
will
you.
notify you of the decision within a reasonable time period. And you can always call their office tomorrow.
Okay, so I'm all set here, I'm free to leave?
You can leave or you can stay. It's totally up to you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Piva. Any further proponents wishing to speak on this item? Hearing none, is there any opponents wishing to speak on this item? Any opponents? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, any written?
No, Mr.
No written proponents or opponents. Is there a motion to close?
Motion so
made
moved.
by Councilor Peckham.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Lee. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. That will adjourn our public hearings tonight. Motion to adjourn our public
Motion
hearings
to
made
adjourn.
by Councilor
Second.
Dion, seconded by Councilor Pelletier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Our public hearings are now adjourned. Fall River City Council Committee on Finance will now be called to order. Madam Clerk.
Councilors Kadim?
Here.
Dion?
Here.
Kilby? Here. Lullaby LeBeau? Here. Lee?
Here.
Peckham?
Here.
Pelletier?
Here.
Pereira?
Here.
President Ponti.
Here, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and deemed acknowledged and permissible. First item on our agenda this evening is citizens' input. Any written citizens' input? Anybody sign up? It doesn't look like there's anybody that signed up for citizens' input. Any written, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay.
Council President and City Council, I want to get right to the point. When will this council stop approving the appointments of individuals who are not qualified by any means or experience? With the previous administration, we saw people being hired with no experience into positions that they were not qualified for, and the city council approved those contracts. Those people lasted a month or two and were fired, resigned, or given yet another position that they were not qualified for, and we still have those people on the payroll. Did you forget about them? We have seen people appointed to boards and commissions by two administrations, but more so with the current administration, where the individuals appointed met with the administration and told how they must vote on a specific issue or issues, and those appointments were political payback for favors granted to the administration. You have before you this evening two appointments to the Port Authority where neither potential appointment has any background or qualifications for the position except to do the bidding of the administration. One of those candidates has spoken very vocally in support of this administration when he was a candidate and is now soliciting signatures for his reelection. This is obviously a questionable appointment, and of course I know at least three councilors who will vote in the affirmative of these candidates as they see this administration as perfect and will always answer his bidding. Please seriously consider denying these appointments for the safety and security of our citizens, the waterfront, as we know it, and our valuable asset, the state pier, which the mayor wants to have yet another political insider appointed to a do-nothing, no-show, $77,000 a year job in addition to their current job. Money just seems to flow from this administration to his friends. This past week, City Councilor Sean Kadim was quite clear when he called out the council's duplicitous behaviors and actions. Various city councilors stomp their feet and complain about issues and budgets, and they make scenes in front of the camera to show that they allegedly care about the citizens and the taxpayer. Such actions as we see are fruitless, as those same complainers will vote to pass the resolution, ordinance, or budget. The only benefit this shows is the benefit to the mayor and those of the city's typical function of wasting taxpayer funds. In an effort to shorten this budget process and to cut out the melodramatics of certain councilors, just pass it, as we know you will do anyhow. I know it's an election year, but do you really have to do a floor show for the people, which means nothing because you intend to rape the taxpayer once again this year? As Councilor Kadim stated, you will complain and yet pass it anyway. So save the people your fake platitudes and for once be honest with the people. Rob them publicly and without the cover of your performance. Finally, the City Council is being asked to receive the ARPA money from the federal government. This money will be very beneficial for the city of Fall River if it is utilized for the benefit of the taxpayer and its citizens. Many people do not trust this administration, its financial team, and once again, a city administrator that, while new, has been ineffective and can only act with the supervision of a handler. This will be the first of two payments, and unless you see that the money is being used for the people and Fall River's infrastructure, I would suggest that you do not accept it without restrictions. We've heard the CFO consistently say that items can be covered with COVID money, yet we do not see that happening publicly. Even with our city finances, it has been proven that the CFO and a previous city administrator seem to always say they do not have the numbers or the answers. When Bob Connors was our city administrator, he knew every dime and where it was spent or went. We cannot say that for the past several years. When will this council call for a recess until they can produce the answers requested? It appears to many people that the answers and numbers must be fabricated. Transparency was touted by this administration during his campaign, and we have seen anything but. The people must come first, and you have to be sure that they do. Respectfully, C.J. Ferry.
Thank you.
And we have one other.
Councilor in seat 8, Councilor Pereira.
I know that we're not supposed to go on after citizen input, and sometimes we do and we shouldn't, but just a point of clarification. What did that, Mr. Ferry say was the salary for the person on the Port Authority?
77,000.
And do they get paid? I thought Port Authority was volunteer.
The Port Authority does not get paid.
Port Authority, sorry. They don't get paid,
No.
correct? Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. I was confused with that.
No, but just so we're clear, right? The
What is that?
board doesn't get paid, but they do hire an individual who oversees the port at a price of $77,000 a year.
Okay. Well, I thought he was saying that
Yeah, no,
people on that board, I was like, whoa, wait a
I'd
minute.
apply for that board too.
Just to clarify that, thank you.
Thanks.
I yield.
Next, citizens input, Madam Clerk.
Good afternoon, members of the City Council. I think today's news of the Fall River School Committee skipping out on tonight's meeting is saddening. It's saddening not for me, but for the school district and for the kids. I believe we should put politics aside and always put the needs of this district first. Oh, and there's plenty of them to discuss where I wish members of the school committee were. I wish many of the school committee members were there so they could give their input and put our minds together. If you are elected to a public office and you take an oath, you should honor your oath and fulfill the duties you are elected to perform. I hope the City Council discusses tonight with the school department the ailing teacher retention rate where our teachers are paid next to nothing. We have issues with our attendance officers. They need further assistance, more help, and as shown in the David Allman report. We have issues with the new Durfee High School, and we have a major taxpayer issue with the debt exclusion. The debt exclusion is going to go over the cost to the taxpayer that Durfee Rising told us. We need to work together collectively to end the debt exclusion. And I wish members of the school committee, people who have a full working knowledge of the budget and have voting power, were here today to discuss these issues. We owe it to our faculty, our students, and we owe it to the taxpayer that fiscal funds are being used appropriately. Now regarding wrongdoing in the school department. This is an issue that sadly has been discussed all too often. I submitted a citizen's input to the Fall River School Committee Instructional Subcommittee. I submitted a citizen's input discussing the lack of transparency in the school department and the wish that the next superintendent would be nicer to people than the previous one has been. Mark Costa, the school committee vice chairman and chairman of the subcommittee, restricted my freedom of speech and baselessly ruled my citizens' input out of order. Mark Costa violated my civil rights. Any person who wishes to express their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with government has the right to do so. Mark Costa has no say in the content of my speech. Mark Costa has no right to restrict my speech. People should realize we can agree or disagree on issues without resorting to potentially illegal actions such as restricting citizens' input. It goes against the city charter, it violates Mass General Law, and it violates the First Amendment of the Constitution. This is nothing new. The school committee has developed new habits of restricting speech and information from the public because they personally disagree with it. This will change in November. This should not be allowed. It is unlawful and it needs to be addressed. I know Counselor in seat 8 believes this is not a city issue. I disagree. This is a big city issue, and it is time elected officials are held accountable for their actions. There are First Amendment organizations that are starting to peek at this issue, and rightfully so. Thank you very much for your time. Respectfully submitted, Colin Gaius.
Thank you. I just wanted the community and those here to be aware, I invited the school committee out of courtesy. It is not usually something that is done on a regular basis where you have a joint meeting with the school committee in preparation of this. We did that when we had our discussions in the beginning of the year by charter. So I just invited members of the school committee. If they elected to show up, I would have posted the meeting appropriately with the school committee to have a joint meeting, but it isn't, they're not required to attend. I just didn't want any misunderstanding of that. They were invited as a courtesy by me, and they had other obligations, which is totally fine. So I just wanted everybody to be aware of that. Anything further, Madam Clerk?
And now, Mr. President.
That would be it. All right, that will conclude citizens' input this evening. Just for the community to be aware, we are still accepting citizens' input via email at city_council@fallriverma.org, 3 p.m. of date of the meeting. We'll continue to do that at this point. We have been doing this through COVID, even though the governor has lifted the emergency. I believe he's lifting it in June, but the mask mandate. But we'll take this meeting by meeting at this point. Next item on our agenda is the mayor appropriating 1809. Actually, before we do that, there are some citations to be given. Mr. Furland, are you here? Yep. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Furland first, and then we'll go into our Committee on Finance.
Thank you very much, Council President, councilors. Tonight, I just wanted to recognize some people that really help out this community. They're part of this community. and that's Diamond Regional Vocational High School. The water department and the sewer department, we've used Diamond for many different projects within our divisions. These are things that we could go out and we could hire a company to come in and do, but it's a learning experience for the students to be able to get out of the shop, come out of the school, be able to come out and perform these real-life, actual tasks that they're gonna be doing within their life. You know, myself, I'm a Diamond graduate, so Diamond has a close spot in my heart, but I think it's something. So I asked for some citations from the city council, which you guys were gracious enough to be able to provide for some of the shops that have helped us out. And also, the mayor also provided some citations for those. So the first citation will be for the electrical shop, and we have Mr. Rodriguez here from the electrical shop, as well as Storm Tripp, who's the outstanding vocational student this year, graduating this Thursday from Diamond. Also, we have Miss Torres, who's the vocational coordinator over at Diamond. So some of the things that the electrical shop has done for us, just within the past couple of years within our divisions. So our reservation headquarters, so 2929 Blossom Road, we have a 4-stall garage out in the back that's been, you know, over the years, the electrical has grown old in there. They rewired the whole entire 4-stall garage with their students. They put in a new electrical service into the building, overground to a new pole, and then underground into a new breaker panel to be able to provide the service into that building. Within the reservation headquarters office building, so that's the house there that we use as an office for our staff that's stationed out in the reservation, they went through the whole entire, they rewired everything within the basement, all the lights on the first floor, all the lights on the second floor, as well as redid all the plugs throughout the entire house. That was something that's very good for these students to be able to learn, get in a house that was built in the late 1800s and actually learn how to fish these wires through the house rather than just figuring out how to connect the wires in the shop. So, you know, electrical shop was one of the shops that's really helped us out in the reservation. The other two shops that have really worked for us in the past couple of years is Carpentry and Advanced Machine Technologies, Advanced Manufacturing Program, excuse me. Used to be Machine Shop when I went there. But, so we've really had Carpentry, they've helped us with our 4-stall garage out in the reservation again. White cedar shingles, they did all 4 sides with new corner boards and new trims all the way around. Replaced 12 windows with new construction windows within that 4-stall garage. They built shelves and other things within the garage, repointed the whole entire foundation around that garage. So that's something that they were able to do with their carpentry shop. The next thing I'm going to talk about is a project that was a joint project between Carpentry and Advanced Machine Technology. And it's the No. 7 Ironworks sluice gates. So these are sluice gates that are part of the Quikasham River outlet. These are down at the No. 7 Ironworks building, so that's the Workout World building, in between the two buildings. If you drive in between, you can see where the old waterfall is. There's 2 gates in there where we're able to control the amount of water that either goes out to Battleship Cove or goes over to Crab Pond. Those gates were extremely old, rotted out from, you know, probably 50+ years of being in service. We were able to work with Diamond to remove those gates. They took them back to the school, back to the shops. They were able to fully reconstruct those gates. They made it out of a particular wood that won't expand and contract, and it'll last for many years. They took the gears, very long, they were cast iron originally gears. They took and they brought Dental Shop in to make a mold of them so they could use Machine Shop to actually remill all those gears out of stainless steel. So, number of things that they've done to help us. So, I wanted to bring them down for these citations just to recognize them and some of the help that they do within the community. It's not just us that they do. There's many other things that they do throughout the community. They've been very involved with the Watuppa Rowan Center and working on their building and other buildings as well. Just some of the other things that Diamond's done for us in the past, they've made over 150 fire lane gate signs that we have posted out in the reservation on all the fire lane gates. They fabricated some wildlife ramps, emergency to get the wildlife out of the interceptor drain down next to our treatment plant. And some students also designed the Department of Community Utilities logo that we're currently using. That was all designed by their students and done by their students. So if you want, I can bring the teachers down and present
Please.
them with the citations.
Come on down.
May I make a quick comment, please?
Counselor in C3, Counselor Kilby.
Thank you, Mr. Pearl, for such a good presentation.
Come on down.
And thank you for following up on something I brought up to you about a year ago in terms of the fawns,
Yes.
we're getting trapped in a canal and we're virtually dying of starvation.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
that's, I'm so happy that you followed up on that. And congratulations to the kids for doing that, because that was, I visited and actually saw for myself what was going on in there in terms of the wildlife.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Excellent. So we have 3 citations for the different shops. These read, the City of Fall River, Massachusetts City Council, official resolution. Be it resolved that the City of Fall River hereby extends its commendation to students and faculty at Diamond Regional Vocational Technical High School, the electricity program, and we also have them for the carpentry program, as well as the advanced manufacturing program. In recognition of your extraordinary work, professionalism, and dedication in making significant capital improvements to the historic structures located at Watuppa Reservation headquarters during the fall and winter of 2020. Be it further resolved that the City of Fall River extends its best wishes to continued success, and that the resolutions be entered into the records of the City Council. This one was adopted on March 23rd, 2021, and the ones for the other shops will be adopted tonight by the council. So, thank you very much, council.
Thank you.
We have one here for the advanced manufacturing program, Mr. Valerio. And one here for the carpentry program, who's being accepted by Mr. Patel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Furlong. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ferland, thank you very much, and thank you very much, guys.
Congratulations, Bill.
There's also, I just want to take some time to acknowledge, thank you very much, Diamond as well, with the workings of Councilor Pereira. She helped us get a wonderful plaque that is going to be presented into our city council chambers. It was made by Diamond. I know former Councilor Mitchell always did awards and stuff like that for people at Diamond. So I want to acknowledge Councilor Pereira for working with Diamond to get us this outstanding plaque that we are able to now finally put in our city council chamber. So thank you very much, Diamond.
Good job. Good job.
All right, thank you very much. That will conclude the awards for this evening. Next order of business, before we get into our municipal budget presentation, is the mayor appropriating $1.809616 from Community Preservation Act funds for fiscal year 2022, the community projects. It was referred on May 11th. Is there questions? If there's no questions, we can refer it to full council for action, unless the council has questions. We would need to refer this to full council for action.
Yeah. Motion to refer.
Motion to refer is made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Pereira. Discussion on Councilor in seat 4, Council Vice President.
I just had a question on this, on the lights at Maplewood Park.
I can't hear you, Councilor.
I just had a question on the lights on Maplewood Park.
Okay, who's here to represent?
John Brandt.
Yeah, I can call down Joe. Joe's, come on up, Joe.
You can come on down and speak, sit right down, or if you just have a question, it could probably just be answered right
Yeah.
there.
Actually, Joe had the best presentation ever for CPC funds. He had video, slides, everything. So he did an excellent job, and it's exciting that we were able to help out the park. So go ahead and tell him.
So I did read the application. I guess my question is more, when we had the administration in front of us, can you just tell me, where are the lights going?
The Holt Field is the upper field at Maplewood. It's the larger field that houses the bigger diamond. So it's Albert and Stafford Road. It's the park that's closest to that area.
Okay. And I noticed that you had park board approval before you put in your application back in January.
Yes.
And that-
Go ahead. Yes.
I just wanted to point out that when the administration, spoke to Councilor Dion about this over the weekend, when we had the DCM and parks in front of us and the resolutions for all of the lighting at fields, it was never mentioned that they had approved an application for Mr. Schaub's to go in and it's $499,000 for lights, and I think that would have been something that would have mentioned when we were having a 2-hour-long discussion on lights in the park. I mean, I'm happy to support it. I'm glad that you did apply. I just wish that it would have been mentioned during the extensive lighting conversations. With that, I yield.
Mr. Travis, you can come down.
You want me? I can answer that. When we came for the meeting, it was more about the actual electricity. So we really weren't here discussing the lights, and it wasn't approved yet, so I didn't feel comfortable.
I'm not speaking about you, I'm speaking about
Oh,
the
okay.
parks were here, and they never even mentioned that you guys were applying for this.
Yeah, it
and
wasn't a
was
reflection on
whole-
you.
Okay,
or
no,
based-
No,
just so you know,
It was
we
the-
weren't trying to hide it. I
No,
just
no,
didn't
no,
want to
no,
put the
no, no,
cart
no.
We
before
know
the
that.
horse. and-
Yeah, no, I know that you were approved, they wrote a recommendation, but they just never mentioned it when they were here.
My understanding of the approval was that they were on board with the concept of those lights being changed for the reasons of them not being otherwise changed if this doesn't happen. And then there are no lights at that park because the ones that are there are gonna topple over, probably soon. So
Hopefully not.
that was kind of, but I didn't realize what approval it was at what level. I thought they were like, oh yeah, that's a good project.
No, it is a great project.
We'll
It just-
work with you on that if it happens.
Yeah, I think the park board supported us. Joe put an excellent presentation
did.
together. So it really wasn't the park board that was going for the grant.
No, I
Obvious-
understand.
Okay, I just,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, motion to refer to full council has been made by Councilor Kilby. Do I have a seconded by Councilor Lee? Discussion? Hearing no further discussions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next item on our agenda is a presentation for the FY 2022 municipal budget. At this time, I'd like to welcome down to the floor Mayor Coogan so he could speak. I invited him as well to give us just a brief comment or presentation with respect to the municipal budget. Mayor? Mrs. Sahadi? Mr. McCoy, you can come down as well and join the mayor at the table if you'd like. Mr. Mayor?
First of all, I want to thank Council President and all you guys for giving us some time tonight. I know we have a overview of what's going on in the budget this year. Obviously, Fall River is in a very fortunate place this year because of the ARPA money. It came at a terrible price, as I've said a number of times, with close to 370 of our residents dead, 14,000 people sick in various stages, businesses closed, and it went on for way, way too long. I know you guys supported us all the way on this, and I appreciate everything you guys did. It was extremely trying, and I guess the federal government at the end acknowledged it by making many cities and states whole. I had a conversation yesterday with the Lieutenant Governor, and they're at the same position we're at with their $5 billion, trying to decide what's the best way to spend it to maximize its use for the state, which is what we're doing in Fall River right now. We've put a panel together. We're getting ideas. I would love any of you to come forward, email, or to give us a call with the ideas you think that might benefit the citizens in Fall River the most. It would really be helpful, and we appreciate that from all of you. But as far as our budget goes this year, I think because of the lost revenue modifications, I think we're going to be in good shape for this year and hopefully till at least 2026. And then overall in Fall River, we're in a very good spot. Growth seems to be coming back. We have a lot of new businesses coming in. Real estate is still extremely hot. And if we factor in new growth and some economic development, we're going to be fine. Working with you guys, I know we can get through this, and we'll have a budget this year that the residents are proud of. But again, thanks for letting me come down, and stay in touch, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? I don't think so. Oh, Counselor in seat 5, Counselor Lee.
Just checking to make sure in this budget, you are seeking to raise taxes to 2.5%?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you going to fill in any vacant positions or open any new positions or provide any raises to any positions on the budget?
Not sure of that. I know we have our regular 1.5% for everybody. Specific raises for departments. I know that was something that seemed like it was being kicked around with the ordinance change, but that was merely a cap. I have to thank Councilor Kadim for working with us on that to give us an idea of those ranges. I was not sure of that, but I did get guidance from both him and Mary, and hopefully that's what they are. They're just ranges. There's no, I hear that stuff too, but there's no raises set in there for anybody at this time.
Okay.
We'll see how the budget goes, how people perform, and we'll base it on that. That's how raises should
Just so the council's aware, I don't want to jump too far into this. We are going to be getting our municipal budget presentation here today. So I think a lot of the questions are probably going to be asked, but.
Okay. I'll leave it at that,
Yeah,
Council President.
no problem. I just want to allow the council to digest the municipal part of the budget this evening. We will have our opportunity to speak and ask questions. If there was just a quick point of information, I would have allowed it, but
I got you.
I just want to, I want to stick to it. Hearing no further questions or comments, Mr. Mayor, thank you for attending this evening. We will now sit for Mrs. Sahadi's presentation on the FY 2022 budget presentation, which is a short 27 pages.
That would be correct, Council President. So I'll skip some of the pages, so it'll go faster. How's that? So, as everyone knows, this was quite the year. It was quite the year as the budget began back in May of last year when it was presented to you, or the first version of it was presented to you on or about May 15th, and at which time the pandemic was still in full blown, so to speak, and the state hadn't been able to vote their budget. So although the governor had presented his budget back in January, as he does each year, we were at a point in time last year at this time where we didn't have really an idea of what our state aid was going to be. It was very unprecedented, and so for the first time in the city's history, we had 1/12 budgets. So where are we today? So today, we're at the point that every municipality across the state of Massachusetts and across the United States are trying to close out their fiscal '21 budget. And we are doing the same. So we'll have a couple of slides on fiscal '21 and where we think we're going to end the year. We have 1 month left in time. And in addition, at this particular point, as you know, the city received $7.9 million in CARES money. And as of today, I'll be happy to tell you that we have drawn down the last $1 million or $1.3 million of the CARES money. And so we will hopefully by December 30th, which is the date that we have to have received all the benefits of the particular CARES money, the 7.9, we will have expended all of that money on appropriate uses in terms of the pandemic, as well as the PPE. As you can see in a number of locations around city government, we made sure that we had sufficient PPE, and then certainly, a thanks or a big kudos goes out to the EMS department with all of the abilities to do the testing and then now the vaccines. The information with regard to fiscal '21, just as a note, is through May 31st. So I use the Munis reports through May 31st to report on what we're expecting FY '21 to close at. One of the most important things on the revenue end of it is, as you know, there was a lot of debate at this council last year with regard to balancing the budget with $2 million worth of stabilization one-time money. That one-time money, that $2 million, has not been used to date and will not be used to balance and close this budget. So at this particular point, we have $9 million in the stabilization fund and will continue to have that $9 million in the fund as we go forward into fiscal '22. Some of the areas that we expect the FY '21 budget to end up in, so to speak, in terms of the anticipated turnbacks and/or deficits. We're expecting a turnback of about $3.1 million. We've been working closely with Mr. Almeida and the estimates going forward. He's estimated somewhere between this 3.1 and 3.4, so to be conservative, we're looking at $3.1 million. We are expecting, in the insurance category within your 2021 budget, a $350,000 turnback, which is generally related to workman's comp. The assessments, again, school, reduced enrollment, and other areas that calculate the charter school assessment, we are expecting a turnback there of $650,000. And the libraries, as you know, COVID had them closed for the majority of the year, and so in that particular department, there'll be approximately $115,000 turnback. In addition, just a note that I didn't include in this particular screen, but we did also close the South End Library, which also contributed to the turnback. And then the city administration, in terms of that particular department, we're expecting $165,000 turnback, primarily because of the unfilled position. On the deficit side, the police department, we're expecting a $300,000 deficit on the police side. As you know, earlier this year, we settled the contracts and paid the retro pay for the 2 years, and of course for the salaries through the end of the year, which totaled $495,000. Knowing, as you know, in the correspondence that the mayor sent to you at that time, we indicated that there would be a deficit and that we would be covering it at year end, knowing that we were going to have these other surpluses. And the same is true with the fire. The fire is expecting a deficit of $430,000. We too settled the firefighters contract, and the retro pay there for the 2 years was $596,000, 220. So in both those cases, well, I shouldn't say that. In the police instance, the outstanding contracts still are the Superiors. And so we have met numerous times with the Superior union, but at this particular point, it has not been settled and probably will not be settled prior to June 30th. Snow and Ice had a deficit of $535,000, and solid waste disposal is expected to have a deficit of about $400,000. Again, this is somewhat related to COVID. I know you've heard Mr. Perry speak at length about the increased tonnage, and the lack of the PAPE program continues to increase that tonnage. And then certainly lastly, in terms of the more significant departments that have either turnbacks or deficits, the law department is expecting to have a deficit of about $120,000. Again, primarily because there are significantly more cases in fiscal year '21 than we had in a number of the prior fiscal years.
Mr. President, before we get,
Councilman seat one.
I've got some serious concern about the last slide, and since we've got everybody at the table, can I ask some questions about that? It's FY '21, I mean,
I'll allow you briefly, yes.
I don't know how my colleagues feel, but we've received 3 quarterly budgets. The last quarter budget, the second quarter budget, I specifically asked if there were going to be any deficits or there any concerns. We were told at that time that solid waste was the only one. Now, I know police and fire contracts came before us and that we'd have to fund those for those retro pays. However, just looking at the third quarter review, the police salaries were at 74.5%, which the target should have been 75%. So 74.5% is showing a savings of $110,000 in the police department. So this slide is saying that the retro's $495,000. The expected deficit is $300,000. So I see a little bit of the reduction there, probably from the savings. However, we had the police chief before us, and he literally sat here and kind of contradicts what's before us. He says he's had vacancies, he's had overtime that he's had to fill, that he was going to run in a deficit, and I think a number of councilors asked the question. And now we're here talking about the FY22 budget, learning after the third quarter budget review that there are going to be deficits. So at what point does the administration come down for a transfer, and at what point do you know that there's a deficit? I, for one, have issues with that. So are we going to start rubber stamping transfers at the year end because June 30th, once again, we have to make transfers before July 15th? And I'll go to the fire. And on top of this also, that's just salaries. So we've got the police expense 55.8%. I haven't even calculated the savings at that, but it's just over 50% of $1.8 million. So let's just call that a $900,000 savings. We've got the fire department salaries coming in at 72.1%. This is all at the end of April, okay? So if we take the 72% versus 75% for salaries, that's a $411,000 savings. The expenses for the fire are at 61.7%. So I'm extremely confused by the fact that we're now seeing in June that we're going to have these deficits. We had a department head come before us at the last meeting telling us there's going to be deficits. And the only deficit, when I specifically asked the question, was solid waste and disposal. And we have not seen any transfer requests come before us. We've not seen any fund advisories come before us. Yet again, this is my frustration. Is it just because we automatically got to make transfers? So if we decide not to make the transfers, I know what happens. So if we decide not to make the transfers, it's just going to eat up our free cash. But fine, it's probably a wash at the end of the day, and the administration doesn't care. But there's procedures in place for a reason. So I mean, I'd like to get a response as to
Mrs.
why
Sahadi, can you
we're
elaborate?
receiving this information.
I certainly will. So both the fire and the police, you did receive correspondence from the mayor indicating that there would more likely than not be deficits. And that is true for both of those. If you do the math between 495 and 300, they would have had a surplus. Those retro pays were paid out after the third quarter report, which you are quoting from.
So if I may, right, I guess the bigger issue here is the police chief was before us at our last meeting, right? And he indicated to us that we weren't going to be having these specific deficits that Councilor Kadim and we are being presented here this evening with. So I guess the question is, right, is there more that we need to be made aware of here, or is there been something specifically that has changed?
Well, there's nothing specific that it was changed. I'm not sure. I'm sure I was here at the meeting. I don't know the specific question that was posed or the answer. I'm not sure if the chief was speaking exclusive of the retros that would have been requested at the time to come from stabilization, but being prudent with leaving our money in the stabilization fund, knowing that we were going to have other surpluses, it only made sense to write the letter to you as a council indicating that the deficits would exist and that we would be covering those deficits at year end. That's what we're doing here. The snow and ice that deficit would have been on the third quarter report. So, and we talked about the solid waste deficit. So the only deficit I can see on this list that we may not have spoken about is the law department.
Right, but I'll go back to police and fire. So when did you know, but outside of the retro pays, that there was going to be a deficit in police and fire?
It's not outside of it's
I beg
included
to-
within. So if you take the $495,000 and you subtract the $300,000 deficit, they would have had a surplus of $200,000. And the same is true with fire. If
Okay,
you
so-
take the retros out, they would have had a surplus,
All right, so if we
but
remove.
for the retros.
So if I'm looking at the retros, $600,000. the fire department. We've got the expected deficit at 430. If I do the calculations, and I could be off, but if I look at the salaries as of the end of the third quarter, right, so the end of March, in the salaries, the savings is $411,000,
Well.
right?
it-
So that means between,
not to
hold on one
interrupt-
second, so that means between March and June, in 2 months, somewhere along the line, we've spent $400,000 in salaries that typically, I mean, if you're looking at a projection, something's got to go on. So there's got to be overtime, there's got to be some type of adjustments that are outside of the salaries, I mean, the retros. And then you've got expenses that are only at 61.7%. So I
In
don't know
both
how we can say, and then I've got a police chief. Listen, you can roll your eyes. It's frustrating when I'm asking a question and you just turn your face and just roll your eyes, because this is
I'm
literally
trying
just trying
to answer you, and you're asking a question that, quite frankly, without having a heads up, I can't give you all the details in every single department where they have spent their money between the March quarter and today. There certainly has been a number of issues that have come up, or items that have come up in the police department that has caused additional overtime. Overtime that they may not have anticipated.
All right, Miss-
They have also hired and sent individuals to the academy that were not necessarily in the March quarterly report. So you can't simply take the March quarterly report, as you know, and multiply it out to determine whether or not they're going to have a surplus. As for the expenses, both departments have not determined that they are going to have turnbacks. They still have a month of June where they can certainly encumber some of their funds that they have left if they so choose to do so. So at this particular point, we are speaking of those items that we are aware of. And this particular slide and this particular presentation is for information. We don't know how the year end is going to close at this particular point, and we certainly didn't know in March, with the exception of the retro pays, which we have spoken about at previous meetings, as well as the snow and ice deficit, which was in the March report. We've talked about those items. So I am not rolling my eyes at you, Councilor Kadim. All I'm saying is you're asking questions that can't possibly be answered this evening.
Like, they absolutely, well, first of all, I can't give you a heads up when we're not given a heads up about potential deficits or items. I'm not managing this budget, right? So you should be sitting with department heads, identifying what you're looking for, forecasting for the months out, right? So when you get to the third quarter, you're asking your department heads, what do you need for the fourth quarter? What do we need? You know, when you're at quarter two, what do you need for the next 6 months? And that's my frustration is now we knew we needed to have transfers for the retro pays for the collective bargaining agreements that were settled, but we haven't seen a transfer. So the problem is that if we decide to say no on the transfer, how are you going to manage this? How is the administration going to manage to close this deficit? So you've essentially forced us to make transfers and approve transfers. That's my point. It takes away the checks and balance from the city council. This is our approval. This is our authority. This is our right. We should know where we stand, line item transfers. We should be getting transfers, and we typically get transfers. But we should be getting transfers on a timely manner and not waiting to the year end to figure out where we're going to be and say, hey, listen, at this point, you either approve it or we're deficit spending. That's the issue I have. And quite frankly, the police department, again, the police chief was here last meeting talking about a resolution on $250,000 to get walking beats. He specifically told us that his budget, his salary line item was going to run into the deficit. I called him out on it. He said, well, I'm going to manage my department. But none of the councilors here know that he added additional captain. We've never heard that there's been an additional captain that's been hired that's not necessarily needed or agreed to approve, but we're running a deficit. So let's hire another captain. We haven't had those conversations. Right? I mean, I could pick this apart. It's just frustrating. And I know people want to say I'm grandstanding and I'm pontificating, but it's the same thing over and over again. It's the last minute. Just respect the council, allow us to do our jobs. We shouldn't be getting a slide saying we're in the deficit, and oh, by the way, by July 15th, we'll have everything to you so we can close out the books, which is required by Massachusetts general law. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. Is this, Mrs. Sahadi, is this a common practice that we We usually wait until the end of the fiscal year to bring out these serious.
Mr. President, can I ask you a question? What is the purpose of the quarterly reviews? If, when we get in quarterly updates,
Yeah, no doubt.
and we
To
ask
answer-
questions where we are, because it's supposed to be looking at a time period,
Mm-hmm.
forecasting in the future, so we know where we are, so we can manage our financial budget, right? And if we're not getting the information, then what's the point? Why are we wasting our time putting quarterly budget reviews on the city council agenda?
That's a good question. So,
But Councilor Kadim, you had this information, you had the police information, you had the fire information, you had the snow and ice
I
information,
don't
and you
disagree with
had
that.
the solid waste disposal information. The only information on the screen that I have not spoken about in this council chambers is the law department expenses.
Right, and I've got an issue with that, and I'm still telling you, and I don't agree with you, that the police and fire is solely just on the retros. I don't. The police chief, I want somebody in the administration to tell me right now that the police chief cannot add another captain to the position that was above and beyond what was approved in the budget. We're in a deficit. So it can't solely be the fact that we've got retros, because we just added another captain that we didn't have. So one would suggest that there is more deficit than just the retro. The chief was down before us. He's short staffing. So that means there should be a savings in the salary. So if he's short staffing, then how are we in a deficit already? Because he's putting more overtime, that's fine. So we got more overtime, but we're adding positions. We're in a deficit. At what point does this city council get the heads up, just like the administration wants?
so I guess the question is, to Mrs. Sahadi, Mayor, or Mr. McCoy can answer the question. When you're looking at your budget forecasting and you're seeing specific deficits, let's say in police, at what point is a directive given to the specific department head, chief, or whatever specific department head is, to stop the specific spending and notify the city council specifically to those deficits? What is that process like?
Well, uniquely in this year, if the police department salaries would have been over by $495,000, or let's say over $500,000 with the anticipated projections, then that's when the conversation would occur. This year is unique because we paid out contract settlements in both the police and fire. And we knew that, and that was discussed in this council chamber with you when we paid out and you approved those contracts. We could have simply come at that particular time and transferred $600,000 from stabilization when we did the fire and $500,000 from stabilization when we did the police. But at that time, we knew we were going to have surpluses in other line items. For an example, transportation, because school wasn't in. So, getting back to why we didn't come down with the transfer then, as long as I've been here, the transfers have been done once a year at the end of the year.
Oh, that is such a
not
lie.
true.
Don't,
Well,
don't-
go
don't
back.
tell me that the
Mrs.
transfers
Sahadi.
have only been done once a year.
That's
I am not gonna tolerate any more lies and misinformation coming from the administration. Stop right there. Do not suggest that transfers come down to the city council once a year. Please don't. Please don't. Please. Mr. President.
That is just absolutely not true, Mrs. Otter. We all know, maybe there was a misunderstanding. We don't get transfers once a year. I want to say on a regular basis, the city council sees transfers from the administration on specific line items.
I'm sorry, then, I will have to go back and look. I can tell you factually that last year, the year before, and the year before that, the transfers were done. Matter of fact, the meeting had to be scheduled before July 15th, so the transfer could be done then. And the transfer then is all-inclusive and includes all of the areas that are over, and they're utilized any of those amounts that are turnbacks.
We just had transfers like 3 months ago, 4 months ago. Did we not have appropriation transfers? We literally just, I'm telling you, we literally, from the administration, 3 months ago, had appropriation transfers.
Not that I recall, sorry.
Well, I recall, I agree with Councilor Kadim. I do believe that there were transfers, regardless of the fact.
Point of
Regardless of the
clarification.
fact.
Because a question was asked and wasn't answered. Was the administration aware that there was an extra captain added to the police department?
I wasn't.
Mr. Mayor? Okay, because I noticed that question got looked over, and I wanted to make sure that you got an answer to that. Because if there was a position added and the administration wasn't aware of that, we have a problem. We do. So with that,
Thanks.
if neither one of you knew about it, then I have to take your word for it. But thank you, Counselor Kadim, for asking that.
I can't say I remember that, Chris. I don't. I'll talk to the chief tomorrow and find out, but I don't remember that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Kadim still has the floor.
Yeah.
Look, Counselor,
Listen,
so
what do
the
I say?
frustration.
Can I
hold-
got a
one
question
second,
just for
Counselor.
you. Hold one, please. I got a question. How do I get my authority back as a city councilor? That's a question for everybody. I just want my authority. I ran to be a city councilor, right, for the city of Fall River. It's a legislative body. It comes with very specific roles and responsibilities. How do I get that back so I'm not rubber stamping things? That's the simple thing. Let me know. If I can't get it back, then I won't pull my papers. That's as simple as that. All I want to do is make sure, if we would have had this conversation and said, listen, we're looking at it. But my frustration is that we see a slide, we're hearing something from Mr. Hadi, we're hearing something from the police chief, we're hearing stuff from other people. We've got quarterly budget reviews that we see, we go through, and we go through it, and it was like, everything's fine, we're good. And then we're doing transfers. And I know, listen, I'm part of the administration, I get it. You know right from the get-go, like, I can go through this budget and say, hey, look, we're at 72%. We're good. But when we're tracking it, we know we're gonna need a transfer at the end of the year. It's just a matter of when you come up and you become transparent and let us know about that. I recognize that there's gonna be savings. Maybe you don't know where it's gonna be coming from. Maybe we just need to implement fund advisories so that we get advisories to say, okay, we're gonna potentially be in the deficit in this line item. We might be able to cover the cost within the operating budget, either salaries or expenses, but we wanna let you know what's going on.
We did that with fire and police.
Oh, right.
So,
For
Ms.
retros.
Mrs. Sahadi, can we start adding in our quarterly report, every quarterly report that comes before this council, that you indicate what deficits are, a summary page, like Councilor Kadim indicated, so that we could revert back to, and so this isn't a surprise going forward? Is that something that we could do?
Certainly.
Thank you.
And just for the record, because I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but the police chief yet again said he was having staffing issues. Staffing issues. We heard that last meeting. We've never heard it. We've never heard it before. We've never known that there were staffing issues or concerns because people were out either on sick leave or military leave or whatever the case may be. We've never heard that. You know when we hear it? When we got a couple of people dead in Corky Row, right? And then councilors have to file a resolution to try to get some resolve on the situations that are going on. And it just inadvertently comes out of somebody's mouth. Not because somebody was being proactive, letting us know that there are concerns about staffing levels and shortages in the police department. At any point during any of our quarterly budgets, I yield. We can continue. I mean, because nothing's coming out of this.
Councilor C4.
Thank you. I'm going to echo some of that, but I spoke to Mrs. Sahadi last week because Councilor Kadim is right. The conversation was had after the shooting in Corky Row, which I think was the 20th. We've had one since then, just last week, or just a couple nights ago on Rockcliffe Street, so they keep going. Mrs. Sahadi, when I spoke to you, you said this is as of the end of May?
I used the May Munis reports to project this, yes.
So I didn't have this when we spoke, but the conversation we had, which I then had with Council President, was I asked how this happens, and you said you can go in and do a munis override, correct? If they tell you that they're going to be overspent, you can go in and do a munis override.
That's correct.
So why are we approving a budget only to have it then overridden without the council knowing? That's to you, Council President. If we're approving a budget and we're going over, and a department head is saying we're gonna be overspent, and then the administration can then just go in and override it, why are we approving a budget at all? And my other question is, the conversation that we had, you had said, because I made notes, you expected at that time, by the end of the fiscal year, for the police deficit.
Before you go further on that, I'm sorry. Did you just ask the question, does the administration have the ability to transfer, for instance, between expenses to expenses?
No, she said there's an override.
So.
It's not a transfer, it's an override.
So just so we're clear, right, I want to make it perfectly clear. When there are specific transfers that need to come before this body, that happens, correct? They're not like internal transfers that are occurring without the city council being made aware?
No, that's correct. All the transfers come to this body, and again, I will go back, tomorrow and look at all of the transfers from the prior year, but I believe all of the year-end transfers have been, at least for the last 3 years, if not 4, have been done the first meeting in July, prior to July 15th. Now, whether or not the specific line items were discussed with this council prior to the potential deficits and/or turnbacks in a particular department, I don't recall. I do know police and fire, I specifically discussed that with this council. I do know snow and ice was in the March report. I do know Mr. Perry has talked several times about the solid waste disposal. The only one on this particular screen that we have not, or that I personally have not talked to you about, is the law department, which I just found out about this past week in terms of the expected
I
deficit.
just wanted to make it clear, because the way our council vice president was asking the question and we didn't get a response, just made me question whether or not that is actually
No,
happening.
what she means is.
What is an override
Yeah,
for the,
so
for the council?
The counselor is speaking about is, for an example, the Corporation Council contacted the Auditor's Department this past week and indicated that he is going to need $120,000 worth of bills to be paid prior to the end of the fiscal year. And knowing that we had surpluses in other areas, turnbacks in other areas, she is allowed to override the control that allows him to pay the bills.
Under what amount? Any amount?
Well, in this particular case, he spoke of the 120. We knew we were going to have surpluses in other departments, turnbacks in other departments, and so in this particular case, it would be up to 120. In police and fire, it would have been up to the amount of the retros. Because we knew the retros weren't budgeted.
Mr. President, just so further clarification.
Yeah.
The Munis system, when you, the financial system, the city's financial system,
Right.
which is Munis, you input the budget. Each line item will have a budget, so you have a ceiling. So department heads are not allowed to go above that ceiling unless, at the time, an override is given to the department heads to allow them to go above and beyond the budget, which is the concern. Because the city council appropriates these line items. We take votes based on, and we don't have line item authority, but we appropriate salaries and expenses. So essentially what takes place is, we know department heads are gonna overspend their appropriation, and internally, they're allowed to overspend their appropriation by the city council. At which point, a statement should be made, we need to go down to the city council for a transfer,
Right.
instead of having overrides. That's what Councilor Receipt 4 is saying.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to make light of and understand, because it's very, I didn't know that was happening. I didn't know it's a matter of practice that overrides are given over a budgeted amount. So I'm requesting by Friday that this city council be given any overrides that have been given under any city department, so that we're aware of what's happening, because that is surprising to me that we have overages in specific departments and we're doing overrides.
You have them right here, police, fire, solid waste, and law.
That's it?
That's it.
So, Mrs. Sahadi, though, the conversation that we had, you had expected the police deficit to be more towards 500,000, and on this it says 300,000. But this is the end of May, and we had a conversation through the end of the fiscal year.
Right, so when we went back and looked at it together with the chief and his payroll clerk, we determined that the deficit would be closer to $300,000, actually it's $270 to be exact, at the end of the fiscal year, as opposed to the $500,000 that was originally estimated.
And then the fire you thought was gonna be more towards 300, but this is at 430.
That's correct as well. So once we looked at the overtime and the staffing in the fire department, knowing that there was 2 payrolls left, basically, in the fiscal year, that would be the expected deficit.
And when we approved the union contract, I'm not sure about fire, but the police was done in March. And in speaking with a couple of employees of the police department, they were expecting their first, or that to be in their pay at the end of March. Did that happen?
I believe it was in April. I don't know exactly which week it was. I
Okay.
believe the retros were paid, I believe the police as retros were paid in April, and the fire retros were paid in May.
Can you find that out for us? Because I would
certainly
like to know,
can.
because I don't see it in the, it should have been in the review if that's the case, but I know that they were expecting it towards the end of March in that pay period. So I have the same frustration, Council President, that there is just an override to our budget approval. So again, we're going to sit here and we're going to approve a budget for next year. But if anyone can just go in and override it, and I understand that there's going to be turnbacks in other departments, and I did the math. So the deficit's about 1.7, and not including transportation, the turnbacks are about 1.2. Does the school committee have to vote on turning back transportation?
No,
They don't.
transportation is a municipal expense.
And they can't keep that for in any way, shape, or form?
No.
I'll yield for now, thank you.
Counselor in seat 8.
Yeah, the only question that I have is, when you're talking about a captain's position, correct me if I'm wrong, but I always thought that in the contract, if there was a captain's position vacant, that they then need to advance someone to that position by contract. I think police and fire were like that, which I always thought was kind of odd, because if you have less manpower, why do you need those many supervisors? And I was told by one of the chiefs before, not either one of these chiefs, that the contract states when everybody bumps up, a sergeant, to lieutenant, to captain, whatever. Is that why, if there is a captain's position, would that be the reason that it's in the contract? I'm just curious, because I don't remember, you know.
I've heard that,
Yeah, I
but
think
I'm
that
not
that's in
sure,
the
so I don't want to
contract.
say something.
Well, I'd
We'll
like to
find
get,
out. We'll
I'd like
find
to
out.
get that
I gotta
checked
write
out.
that.
That's the only question I have, because I thought we were gonna be doing more of this discussion as people came in. So I'll hold the rest of my questions till then. With that, I yield. Thank you.
And Councilor Pereira, I don't want to speak out of turn either, but I believe you also have a lack of duties being performed. Or I believe there's an outgoing deputy chief, which may have required a bump in rank for somebody to take on some of those duties. So that's a possibility also, just from overall the conversations I've heard in the last couple of weeks in here from department heads. But again, please don't quote me on that, but that's a potential reason.
Yeah, I just thought that in the contract, people bumped up, because I remember a couple of years ago talking about that. If you have less police, why do we need, you got more chiefs than Indians. It didn't make sense. And they said they couldn't change it because it was in the contract. So I don't know if it's the same thing, but that, I'll hold my other questions till later.
Thank you. Counsel in
I'm
seat
sorry.
2.
I yield.
Yeah, it's my understanding in this situation that it was not a vacancy, it was a created position, which by civil service, that should never happen. If there isn't an opening, you're not supposed to be able to, nobody should be able to move up. And that was my understanding. It was created, not available. So with that, I yield.
Counselor in seat 1, Counselor Kadim.
Thank you. I mean, if we're going to go down this rabbit hole, and we still want to talk about this, so what I'd like to request is Chief Racine's, Chief Racine, yep, Chief Racine's company, and all the training that was submitted to his company, specifically the training that was duplicated, because the state did provide training, and there was duplicated training that was provided by his company, so I'd like to see that. And then I also have a specific question with regards to, just for my own edification, so when we know we're running in the deficits, did the police chief or the fire chief ever been told that they have to cut their budgets somewhere else, so figure out how to live within this, whatever the deficits were gonna be, or any other departments for that matter, law department?
That's a question. Mr. Mayor, Mr. McCoy, anybody?
Not that I'm aware of.
So that's my point, right? So here we go. We wait till the end of the fiscal year. Meanwhile, if we knew about these transfers, maybe second quarter or something like that, we could have put a spending freeze on or told somebody, a department head that they have to rework, look at their expenses or something, reduce some overtime, maybe reduce some training to get this. But again, that's the point. So I just don't want to hear, because I've got a lot more information than I'm sharing right now. So, I mean, if we can continue going down this road, about that it's just really the collective bargaining agreements, but it's not going to look good for individuals if we're going to continue to go down this road. So I'm ready to move on to fiscal year '22.
Mrs. Hardy, please proceed.
So the fiscal '22 budget, the proposed budget, in terms of total resources for city government, is increasing 6%. The real estate taxes are, as everyone has heard at this particular point, are increasing the 2.5%, and new growth. And we are not including in the real estate taxes the debt exclusion for the high school. As far as other sources of revenue, we're anticipating using approximately $4.8 million worth of American Rescue Plan Act, and we'll talk about that, or I was planning on talking about that when we got to revenue. The budget book that you currently have has $4.5 million in it, but we learned just recently that a project that the assessor's office needs to complete in the next year at a cost of $360,000 will not be an eligible cost under the CARES money. And so we will be utilizing the American Rescue Plan Act revenue loss monies for that purpose as well. And as you know, in the previous year, we reduced a significant amount of capital needs in each of the departments, and so we're anticipating utilizing stabilization fund money in the total of $1.677 million for capital items within various departments. And in your budget book, you do have a worksheet itemizing those departments and their capital needs. On the expense side, you'll see that.
Just to make it clear, Mrs. Sahadi, so when you're saying American Rescue Plan money revenue loss of $4.8 million, that is being used in FY '22 as a revenue source?
That's
So
correct.
it's one-time money?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily look at it as one-time money in this
Two-year money then?
In this particular instance, one of the main purposes or one of the eligible categories of the American Rescue Act, there were 5 categories. One of them, when the government provided this money to all of the communities across the United States, were to support some of the revenue losses within the operating budget as compared to the FY '19 budget. So the FY '19 budget is the base year in the calculation. The government has determined that a 4.1% inflationary rate should be the rate applied to it. Once that rate is applied to it, there is another slight calculation, which is the number of months, which is 18 from the beginning of time to, or the beginning of this pandemic, divided by 12. And then compared to the FY '20 to determine what that revenue loss is. And so in our case, doing that math, it comes to about $5.5 million.
Counselor Lee, your point of information?
Just a question.
Yeah.
And is it on page 10 here where we heard there was growth and that there was going to be
New growth?
new growth. Is
So the
that
new-
on this page?
It is not on that particular page.
It doesn't, if it's
This
not,
is
it's
just
okay.
a summary for this evening. It is in your budget book under the resource tab.
Okay.
And I believe it is $3.3 million worth of new growth this past year.
From the
Some of
TIF?
which some of which is part of the TIF for Amazon, and a couple of other companies are being reduced, so they're not receiving as much of a TIF in this coming year. So that's part of the amount, and the other is just simply new growth in our community.
Were there any other income or any other new growth from TIFs besides Amazon this year?
That's coming off, yes. I believe there's 1 or 2 others, but I don't
Okay.
have that information
Thank
with
you.
me.
I yield. Thank you.
They're smaller amounts, Counsel.
You can continue. Thank you.
So this page 11, is the expenditures. Again, for purposes of this evening, this is really big picture. you'll see the FY '21 budget compared to the FY '22, the areas with the significant amount of increases, for the most part, are community maintenance and education and public safety. If you remember, in some of the prior years, or in particular in the prior year, because we're comparing it against '21, we were able to, with all of the uncertainty and the inability to really have a good handle on where our revenue sources were going to be, removed a number of the vacant positions out of the budget. In addition, on the police public safety, we did not fund a number of those positions for the full fiscal year. Instead, we funded them for a half a fiscal year. So that is also one of the reasons why you are seeing an increase there. Again, change in the valuations, the 2.5%, the new growth, and then again, just to repeat myself, the debt exclusion for the high school is not included in this budget for fiscal year '22. American Rescue Plan Act, as I just indicated, $4.8 million of the $34 million that we have already received will be utilized in this budget, and will be utilized in future budgets for the period of time that the Plan Act is in effect and those monies are available for our use. The capital needs that I just spoke about that are intended to come from stabilization this coming year are listed on this particular slide. Again, it's a number of departments who we're not going to ask this committee to bond for, but that we're going to utilize the stabilization fund to fund these needs that have actually existed for more than just this past year. But as you know, again, last year we did not include any capital, and in some of the previous years prior to that, we're unable to include capital in the operating budget, and it's always been the will of this council to put as much into the operating budget as we can. This particular slide is just to give you an idea of the positions. I think we had a counselor that asked that a second ago or a couple of minutes ago with regard to the number of positions that were vacant or removed from the prior year budget that we're reinserting in the current year budget. In administrative services, there are 2 positions, one in the MIS department and one in the law department. In community maintenance, there are 7 positions, 1 in facilities, 1 in cemeteries, 1 in parks, 1 in solid waste, 2 in streets and highways, and 1 in traffic for the $389,000. In community services, it's the assistant planner position that has been, or that was removed. In the financial service area, it's another assessor number 2. 2 meaning not assessor 1, but assessor 2. And then in general government, it's a part-time position included in the elections department. In the fire department, it is 6 firefighters. And in the police department, it was 12 vacancies that were held off to January, so they were only 50% funded in the prior year. We're still committed to 100% of net school spending. This particular budget includes an offset of the URSA II money that we have spoken about in the past. That represents or equates to the increase in the local municipal contribution from '21 to '22 that the governor pointed out was an eligible cost when the governor did his budget. Again, the debt exclusion for Durfee is not going to be added. The $4.5 million of debt exclusion that is principal and interest that will be due in the fiscal '22 year will not be included on the tax bills. The school is expected to open in September. And just as a note, as you know, and we've talked about it in the past, the city has an internal policy of keeping their debt, principal, and interest payments to around $10 million. And this coming year, it will actually be decreasing about $447,000. Other things that have happened that are being reflected in the budget, health insurance, we've introduced a new high deductible plan. It was introduced with a health savings account, so that's helping us. We've got a number of employees that have participated in that. We want to note that the employees' premiums will not be increasing this coming year, and that there's an anticipated holiday later this year as well for the employees. Pandemic, where are we? The city, as you know, received a Department of Health grant of $200,000 for payroll and PPE, so we use that in our health department. We received a $260,000 DOJ grant. The majority of that grant was utilized by the MIS department to purchase laptops and other remote learning and working materials and equipment. The FEMA money, initially, when COVID was first introduced and FEMA came into as one of the first players in the game, so to speak, FEMA money was going, our FEMA expenses were going to be reimbursed at 75%. So further on during the fiscal year, that was changed to 100%, so that additional 25% freed up additional CARES money that we could expend. And so again, the $7.9 million that was awarded to us in CARES money will be completely spent by December of, or at least our plan is for it to be completely spent by December of 2021. And then last, but certainly not least, the city has received 50% of its total allocation of the American Rescue Plan Act, which was the amount of $34,799,571. This slide you saw when we did the joint meeting. It has been updated slightly since then, but you can see right now it looks like we have an outstanding amount to draw down of 700, and I think that says 60,000, sorry, the print is small, 760,000, which our city auditor drew down today. So we will have drawn down all of the $7.9 million.
Just as information, and we'll get to it when the schools come up, but is this the line, is this the account where there were spending costs associated with paying for COVID PPE, for Durfee High School?
That is correct, 552,000. That is correct.
Yeah, okay, I'll ask that question.
522, I'm sorry. Again, I'm sorry, I made the print way too small, even for myself.
I see it.
Next steps, this is what we are working on a daily basis going forward, is really understanding the current funding sources, so that's going to be our opera money, and what are those eligible expenses, as well as keeping current with any potential future infrastructure funding. There's a lot of discussion at the federal level that there'll be an infrastructure bill that will be introduced prior to the end of the calendar year. And that infrastructure bill supposedly at this particular point will include other than water, wastewater, and broadband, which are the three categories that were included in the ARPA money. As the mayor indicated earlier, he has put together a American Recovery Act advisory panel, and these are the members of the panel. And again, I'm sorry, I guess I should have done that in black ink because it makes it hard to read who they are, but I do apologize for that. But these are the members that have indicated they would sit in an advisory role on that particular panel. Where we are in terms of what we're doing, we're identifying, our CSO funding. As you know, ARPA, we've talked about this before, is available for both water and sewer infrastructure. The roads and the sidewalks may not be allowable under this current particular ARPA money unless it relates to a water or sewer project, but there may be future infrastructure that will be allowed. We are still looking and always identifying our needs in the areas of public safety in our own municipal buildings as well as the school buildings. And again, just for your information, the identified ARPA expenses, you've seen this screen before as well. These are the areas that are currently identified in the bill itself as being eligible proper expenses. And that's all I have for you this evening.
Thank you very much on the municipal side. We'll now invite the schools down, please. Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Pacheco, Mr. Almeida. Do you have a PowerPoint, Mr. Almeida?
No, we do not.
Okay. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you for having us. The council has our budget binder and our budget presentations. Tonight, we're here to talk and answer any questions that the council may have regarding our FY '22 budget. A couple notes. When we began this process of building the FY '22 budget, there was a lot of unknowns at the time. So everyone knows, our school department budgets across the Commonwealth are based on what's known as the October 1 numbers. That's what your student demographics are on October 1. So you're always a year behind what your current reality is in terms of students. Because of the pandemic, across the Commonwealth, there's 36,000 students less in the Chapter 70 budget. So in the state's budget, there's 36,000 kids less than they had the year before. In Fall River, that played out to slightly north of 200 students, which is, in the end of the day, is $3 million in Chapter 70 that we were anticipating that we were going to get that we didn't receive. So we built our budget using the governor's House 1, House 2, the House 1 number. And when we built our budget, we said, let's use 100%, but let's shoot for better than 100%. So we built a budget at 100.52% of the governor's numbers, which was slightly over. It was about 926 slightly. It's about $926,000 above what the governor built his budget off of. But we knew, forecasting, given the Student Opportunity Act, we knew that the House and the Senate were going to come in higher than the governor. Usually the way that happens with Republican and Democratic leadership in the executive office and in the legislature. So we hedged, and we built a budget that was 152%. And at the end of the day, the House and the Senate have now released their joint figures, and which is above the governor's budget by $977,000. So at the end of the day, we built a budget that's within what has been promised us from the city, which is a minimum of 100% net school spending, so 100% of what's required. And in building that budget, we looked at where we were with needs. We built in 67 new positions into our operating budget using our formula that's been 5 years in a row now that we've built budgets without pink slips for teachers or paras or administrators. And fortuitously, at the same time that we were building our budget, the federal government announced essentially 3 federal grant dollars, pots of money, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. And we have through FY '25 to spend those dollars. Those come out to about $61.2 million. This was discussed by Mary Sahadi earlier. They've built their budget using what the governor built in, which was local communities on the municipal side can use a certain percentage of ESSER funds to offset their increase in Chapter 70 responsibility. So although that has not yet been approved by the school committee is aware of it and is likely to take that up at the next meeting. And again, the school committee wants nothing more than to work with the city to make sure that we have the best interests of the city at heart. So we can anticipate that being approved after deliberation, which gets us to where we are tonight, which is looking at a total operating budget upwards of 179.4 million dollars, which includes both our operating costs and then what's known as Schedule 19 buybacks, city expenses to support education. It also includes assessments and charters and those kinds of things. So at the end of the day, we're here to answer any questions that you guys may have on our budget. We're confident that this budget, although we should always be shooting for more than net school spending, but this budget, we think, meets the needs of the district as we have them, knowing that we also have contingencies in place. We've also invested, I know Council Pelletier, 2 years ago, you were adamant about preventative maintenance. That's something that we've built into the budget every year now, an increase, our ability to make sure that we're funding our own projects. Ken and his team have done an excellent job of funding a whole host of capital projects through our operating dollars. Plus, we're thankful for the work of the city council for helping us support not only the Durfee, but also the MSBA projects at Watson, Stonewall, Tansy, and RPA. So with that, I'll answer any budget questions that the committee may have.
Councilor in
The team is
seat.
here also to help.
Thank you. Councilor in seat 2, Councilor Dion.
Good evening. How are you today?
Great.
Yeah, I only really have one question. When I went through the budget, I noticed there were a lot of open to be determined positions in the budget. Is that something that's typical?
So many of the open to be determined positions are the new positions that we have
No.
in the budget?
No, there were a lot of them that were clearly marked new positions, but there were quite a few open to be
Okay,
determined
so
positions, and there
they-
were some that were strictly open.
Yeah.
So when I added up all the open to be determined positions, which have nobody attached to them,
Yep.
from what I understand, that's why I'm asking, it amounted to $1,871,787. So I'm just curious, is that something that's typically done? Do those positions get filled, or are they not gonna be filled?
No,
Just because that
those-
is a very large number.
Those positions are needed. The issue is this year with COVID, we've had a tough time filling some positions. So I will state that, when you compare from year to year, this year has been a year where we've had a lot of open positions. The need's there. The kids, we need those positions for the students. We have many para positions that were not filled this year because we just weren't able to fill them. They're still needed, but we weren't able to fill them. Plus this year, with the way we did a lot of the remote teaching this year, they weren't, not to say they weren't needed, but they were needed, but it wasn't necessarily in the classroom because it wasn't face-to-face in many cases. But this year, given the COVID year, it was a high open position year, but we do have plans to continue to fill those positions for the students next year.
Yeah, because it was throughout all departments. It wasn't strictly just teachers or just paras. It was in the custodial department. It's throughout the
We-
entire budget.
We have a lot of, when I say turnover, people are constantly, not to say leaving, but there are people that are retiring. We have positions that open up for, any other particular reason, promotional opportunities that happen and all that kind of thing, but it does happen pretty often.
So in the event that these positions wouldn't be filled, or if a certain percentage wouldn't be filled, would you reduce your budget by the amount of money that wasn't needed to fund positions?
If we were in a position where we were over net school spending, that would be a different conversation. But because we haven't met net school spending, I have to spend every last dollar that's
So
in the
we're
budget.
required under law to spend every single dollar that we have. We have to spend it in order to meet the state law. So under MGL Chapter 70, we have to spend X amount of dollars, or we're under, and the city has to fund next year's allotment plus the difference in the following fiscal year. So it behooves all of us to spend every single dollar as net school spending, so we don't get into arrears of city owing the local municipality money.
Okay, thank you. That I yield.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions. I see a lot in your budget, Mr. Almeida, that shows under each each school, so let's say, for instance, you take the Green School, just because I have the tab open. You see a number that says leftover salaries. Can you explain what that means?
That's just the budget format that we use with all the schools. We identify all the costs that are prior to the salaries, and that amount of money is just left over to pay for the salaries of all the positions in the school.
So when you say leftover salaries, it doesn't actually mean leftover.
No.
That's, so if I take, I think I have the green, actually, I have the Laternal tab open, and if I look at that, it says leftover salaries, $3.4 million. What does
So
that
they're-
reflect at Green?
So that reflects their salaries within the operating budget.
So this goes back to my concerns from prior years, when the school department consistently lays out the amount for each specific individual for salaries, that actually really isn't their amount, it's just whatever the step associated with that individual could be? So is the actual salary for that school 3.4?
That's an average salary that's there for each one of those schools. What you're looking for is in the front. It's in the budget summary tab. There is a breakdown of every single position that we have, every person, and it's got every single salary associated with that person.
Okay. I'm just gonna voice my concerns like I've done every single year, right? It drives me crazy that we look at a budget and like you name a principal at a specific school, and I know you had layoffs and 9C cuts 15 years ago, whatever it was, right? But if you have a principal at a school and you have a budget that is assigned to that person, and let's say that person's at 88.3 and that person's at 72.5, it just doesn't make sense to me. It drives me crazy, personally.
We understand your concern, and we've answered this every year. This is the zero-based budget process that we've used for 5 years. It's resulted in, again, 0 pink slips, 0 layoffs. We do include the actuals, so you have those figures. It just takes a little extra work if you're looking for something specific. But in terms of the major operating big picture, it all totals up, it all charts, and it's all been equalized.
Right, and I get that. I guess looking at a specific individual, Mr. Superintendent, saying that they make 88.3 and they don't make 88.3, to me, isn't zero-based budgeting. It's an inflated number in the salary line in each specific school that the school committee has to their discretion every single year to do transfers. That's not zero-based budgeting.
So it works for me, Counselor. This is the method that I used here for 5 years, and it works for me.
Okay,
It works for the school committee, too.
right. I'll finish my questions after. Councilman C3, Councilor Kilby?
No, I just had the same question, not to be redundant, because I do look at, teachers 65.3, 65.3, 65.3, doesn't necessarily make it 65.3.
No,
So
it's the
obviously,
average
at the end of
salary
the
of
day,
all teachers in the district is that salary.
Correct, but obviously, at the end of the day, it's balanced, obviously.
And you can find their actuals in the tab that Kevin just mentioned.
Another question, Mr. Superintendent, I get calls from parents, and I know it's been a really challenging year, obviously, and on many levels. But I get some calls regarding the lack of paras, or calls I'm getting from teachers and parents saying we need more paras in the classroom. So I know there was an effort to hire many more, and I'm not saying this in a way to ridicule anybody.
We've built
I'm saying it in response to calls that I'm getting, Mr. Superintendent. And in addition to that, on the same level, and I'm reading from my notes from calls I've been getting, some teachers and parents are saying there should be a SPED teacher for each grade, not each class. For instance, at the Spencer Boarding School, is there a SPED teacher that is assigned to the 5th grade? Is there a SPED teacher that's assigned to the 4th grade?
So we have positions called inclusion teachers, which are assigned based on total numbers of kids by school. So if there are enough kids by grade, they would be assigned by grade. If there isn't, they're shared across grades. At the middle level, it works out much more to the analysis that you just gave around by grade. In terms of paras,
And
we've
the main
hired,
church, I do recall last year's budget, there was a large influx
yeah. and
of
we-
paras,
and-
especially at the high school.
And we've built more into this year's budget. We've also created, over the last 4 years, we've created a new position that's an instructional support specialist, which is a para that's almost ready to be a teacher. They have their bachelor's degree and almost their master's to be able to be hired. It's part of our pipeline diversification efforts to hire more folks from within the district. We feel that we have enough support positions, but really where this budget, where we've been able to invest deeply with the Student Opportunity Act money, is also community liaisons. So folks that speak Spanish or Portuguese or French or Arabic, working with our families to engage increased attendance, all the issues that we're experiencing as a district. So we're putting a ton of support positions in, and we will be in, was part of the, I know the mayor mentioned his task force to look at the federal funding. We have a survey out, or it goes out tomorrow morning, in 3 different languages to all of our families, and we hope that you guys fill it out as well, regarding investments with the federal dollars. So if we want to have more paras, that's something that would come out in the survey in terms of support positions. If we need to have more specialist sped positions, we will invest in those, but
Yeah,
it's all
'cause
going
I-
to come out in the feedback.
Council Kadim served on the school committee. I served on the school committee for a decade, and I always found that the biggest bang for the buck was a paraprofessional. That extra individual in a classroom to help out the teacher, and in that line as well, another conversation I had with a teacher is that during the administration of MCAS, when the kids are taking MCAS, our SPED teachers aren't allowed or not to administer the tests. I mean, not our SPED teachers, our
Great
paras. Because from what I'm understanding, it's pulling a lot of staff out of serving needs of some of the students, interventionalists
Well, I mean,
and the like.
when
So-
we're doing the assessment, there's a lot of hands-on in terms of everyone on board to
So I guess,
administer the test.
interrupt you too much, but is there training that's required for paraprofessionals to be able to administer the MCAS?
We give an MCAS every year, update as to what the rules and regulations are in terms of administration, so people get refreshed every year, if you will.
But can they? Superintendent, are they allowed by state, this Department of
Yeah,
Education,
it's-
to administer the MCAS to a classroom?
I would say to you that in terms of administering the test, it's under the license of the principal of the building, and then the individual classroom teachers.
So to answer Councilor Kirby's question, can a para administer the MCAS? Yes or no?
I would say no.
Okay,
It's in
no.
terms of the licensing part. But that's why they have support positions. But in terms of them doing duties during the administration of the
okay.
test, that's what they do.
Okay. Teacher recruitment, is that still being performed? I mean, in the past, we've had difficulty attracting math teachers, science teachers, teachers that represent a certain portion of
We
the
still do.
demographic of our student body.
Well, yeah, so we have 2 issues that we struggle with. One is the hard-to-fill positions, like the high-end math and high-end sciences and languages are always hard to fill, to find people to do those. And then secondly, as we look at diversifying the workforce, it's been a priority of ours over the last 5 years. We've made some improvements, and we've made some headway. For example, the program that we just mentioned with the instructional support specialists and hiring more community liaisons, trying to get more folks that speak second languages, et cetera, into the field as we try to diversify our workforce. But it's a challenge. So coupled with that is the work that we're doing right now on collective bargaining. I can't speak about that publicly right now, but we know that we're behind in terms of salary scale, and
That was my
we
next
need to
question.
fix those things. And quite frankly, unless you're thinking bold about how to fix those things, you never get parity. So we need to get more parity with not only surrounding communities, but also the urban districts of the South Coast who we compete with. So
we're working on that now. We know this is an issue for us, and I'm confident that we'll have a solution and an agreement probably in the next month.
Okay. Do you anticipate the Jeffrey project being ready for the open schools in September?
Great question. So I anticipate that the Durfee project will be ready for the opening in, when do we open this year? First day of September.
September 1.
But we're managing challenges as they come, but I mean, I've been very, very impressed with Ken and the support from the city in terms of our project management and our project managers. I don't know when the last time you were over there was.
Quite often.
Well,
But I went by.
you should try to get
about
over on a
with
Friday.
Councilor Pereira a couple of months ago with
Yeah, we
Mr.
should try to
Pacheco.
get you guys over on a Friday after 3. We'll gladly hook that up. Anyone who wants to come and see the progress. So
It's wonderful,
It's
yeah,
crunch time
absolutely.
right now, and this is the hard part of construction, right? So anyone that's ever led a building project knows it gets to the end, it's crunch time. We've had some areas that were faulty, such as the pitched roof that's been, it's almost fully replaced now, but it's
Well, no
been
project
stripped
that size is
and
gonna come out
replaced.
without,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be I mean.
No, but we,
it's-
but we
it's gonna
demand
have its
perfection.
challenges.
Right, but we demand perfection. It's Fall River, that's what we do, right? So, I think that we're on target. This is definitely crunch time, and we're gonna have to project management to the last second to get things done. But we're looking at a substantial, or what do we call, turnover,
Temporary, yeah.
temporary turnover in the middle of July, which allows us time to do that. But we're not turning over, the current building until we have that done, and we're able to then say, okay, let's begin the next phase of the
You're
project.
anticipating some of my questions. That was gonna be another one in terms of, when is the old building gonna be demolished? Obviously, I mean, are you gonna move the kid, for instance, if the school's ready to be open in September, can you do a demolition while enrollment, because kids in the new building?
Yes, so the demo, if we had to say today, it's probably going to be September 1 before we actually you'll start seeing a demolition. There'll be some abatement that'll happen before that, for any hazardous materials, but the actual tear down of the building will probably not happen until September.
Okay.
And it'll happen while school is in session.
Because I do remember a lot of obviously, the schools that were built under Edmund Lambert, and you were intimately involved with all that. Very challenging to move kids during the school year. The school opens September, then, the holidays approach in November, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then you're moving kids over. It's just a crazy.
Mid-year moves are very difficult.
Activity to occur. So what's your contingency if it's not ready?
The
Remain
building,
in the
the
old
building will be ready. So there may be some parts of the building that may not be ready. For instance, it could be the auditorium, because there's some supply chain issues. So COVID, although it had minimal shutdown for short periods of time, there were employees who did, stay home during COVID. So there was some labor lost, but that wasn't the biggest effect of COVID. The biggest effect of COVID is supply chain, not being able to get materials. And currently, there's an issue with getting some of the finished lumber, the casement work that's coming out of Canada. So we're anticipating that coming in before September 1. However, the installation may be slow, and the auditorium may be that piece.
So
That'll be,
how's that, again, individuals that I know work in construction and they'll go to Home Depot and buy lumber. I mean, the prices of lumber and materials just skyrocketed. So what is that doing to our?
It's the pre-milled stuff. So stuff that's made in Canada, shipped down. So it's not as easy as just buying the lumber and us building it.
How's that all affecting?
It's molding and casement.
well, everything affects the budget. So
That's what I'm saying,
if you're
yeah.
waiting for material, the supply chain is slow, and you decide to change vendors somewhere along the line, if you cannot get the material, then there's gonna be some upcharges. Very seldom does a change like that go the right way. It always, goes up. So all of that stuff's being monitored as we go. And it's tight,
Yeah.
we're coming down to the wire, and
This is building number 8 for me. I understand that the magnitude of this project is something that we've never seen. So when you put that, couple that with the COVID, with the pandemic, you're going to have some issues. And we're very fortunate that there's been a lot of quality contractors and a lot of quality people working for those contractors. So we have not seen any kind of issues that you wouldn't normally expect, other than the supply chain piece that we're very concerned with, and the roof piece that we were very fortunate that we caught when we did. And the companies have all responded as we would hope they would in a situation like this. So that roof should be done within the next few weeks. And the project's been moving forward. They've been done a good job of preparing that building every night in case there was bad weather, so they don't take off more than they can put back. And when they do prep for the next day, they're making sure that that building is sealed up tight. So the construction project is going to be not necessarily on time as we expected it, because we were hoping to get in there early summer, maybe before school let out, and that's going to be pushed more to midsummer. And that will make our work a little more difficult moving in, but we'll be able to do it. As you said, moving in mid-year is a very difficult thing. That happened with Green, it happened with Spencer Borden, and those were tough moves.
Cost size, I think.
And it disrupts the students more than anything. I mean, it's tough on the people who have to do that mid-year move, but that break of time for students is tough. So they've had enough disruptions.
I want to take the opportunity to congratulate you, Ken, and the great work that you've provided the city of Florida during your career, both on the city side and the school department side. I mean, it's obviously it's not you alone. I knew you'd be the first to say that, but that Durfee project, if you think about it, is probably the largest building project in the history of the city.
Well, I don't know, I would say it's vertical project, the CSO project, as a horizontal project, but a vertical project, it's a good-sized project.
And not only yourself, but it's been a very, really challenging year for the entire Fall River school community, the administration, parents, students, teachers, staff, and how the school system had to adapt under very, very adverse situations and a situation. And I think the school department rose to the occasion and weathered the COVID pandemic storm. And hopefully really good things are going to happen. And I do feel bad for the students who had to go through this, because as a Jeffrey grad myself, who was 1983, a long time ago, but I was always a kind of a social person, so I couldn't imagine not being able to attend high school with my friends and with the activities and sports and girlfriend, and it's just, I think about it quite often, that how much the young people over the last year or two have really missed out, and hopefully it'll make them stronger human beings and stronger adults. So I yield. That's all I have.
Thank you, Counselor in seat 8, Counselor Pereira.
Hi, the only question I have, Mr. Malone, or not question, but some concerns that I have, and I did hear you touch upon, making sure that people were paid fairly, because you tend to lose people to other areas because they're being paid more. And that just loses the consistency for kids in a school to always have the same teachers there. It becomes a family. And especially for paras. I mean, paras are making what, 23? I mean, if a para is a single person with 2 children, they're probably eligible for aid and stuff. That's sad. That's sad. I do like what you said about getting paras who are furthering their education to kind of funnel them through like a program to get them, to get their teaching certificate, et cetera. But I do have a concern with special needs. And how many students do we have in day programs that are away, or if we have children that are living in a residential facility? Does the school department pay the entire portion, or do you cost share with DMH, DMR, DCF, Do
so
you-
there's several different models, and Kevin can speak about the specifics, but in terms of the work that we've done over the last several years, our Stone Special Day School, which is in the Westall building. 5 years ago, there was only 38 students in that program. Now I think we're at 80, and of those, 10 are tuitioned in from other districts. So you see how we've grown, try to get more kids back, but now we have other districts saying, let's send our kids to Fall River, and that's tuition
So that's
coming in.
adding our revenue.
Right, so Kevin can explain to you how sometimes there's joint payments between agencies for certain codes of kids.
So for the most part, we pay for the educational expenses of the students, and we pay for the transportation that's required to send the student to the placement. In some cases, we do have situations where we have cost share, we call them cost shares,
Right.
with other communities where we pay half and they pay half. In some cases, you have situations where we only pay the transportation and the other community pays the educational piece of it. It all depends on the situation of the student. But just to speak to Dr. Malone's point about the Stone School, we've actually seen a decrease in the number of students that we've had to send out. Not in a huge way, but to the tune of almost about $1 million less this year compared to previous years. And the point about the revenue, we're actually anticipating about $200,000 worth of revenue from other communities to pay for the students to come in to the Stone School this year. So we've made the Stone School a place where we can send our kids to avoid the cost of sending students out of district, and we're making money for the kids that are actually coming in.
And the faculty that's there are all, I'm sure, certified, et cetera. What do you see as the progress there? You know,
In terms of Stone?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. It originally was a
How's that work?
high school model, now we're a K-12 model. The school is set up under, where you have a classroom teacher, and then you have behavioral supports and counseling supports. It's well-staffed. If you visit it, and I invite you to come down anytime, we could just walk over there, it's not what you think it is. This is really, kids love being there. And the smile across the kid's face when they're leaving to go on the weekend is palpable. So it's a wonderful environment. The progress is being made, but that's just the Stone. We haven't even, like, our ASD rooms, think about, we've built step-up and step-down rooms across the district in multiple sites, so we're keeping kids with autism in district to a much higher extent than other places are doing, than perhaps we've done in the past. Our programming around students who have emotional issues has been compelling, that we've been able to really build and close some classrooms that were substantially separate to do much more inclusive practices. So, you know, as Attorney Kilby mentioned earlier, that, you know, we use formulas for how we have inclusion teachers to support the grade levels and those things. We're investing in those positions. What we're finding now is we want more bilingual SPED support staff and more bilingual counseling support staff to help with the social emotional needs of kids and families as we are becoming much more diverse in terms of language.
Well, and I think even to have diversity in the faculty that's in the school, it gives children from different diverse backgrounds, it gives them a person to identify with. And I think that there's been strides made at that. The other thing that I think about a lot is the truancy issue that we have. And I know we have only so many truant officers throughout the city, but I'm wondering why there's not more of a cross-section of, let's say, the school department and like a DCF. If you file a chins on a child that's in need of service because of truancy, you can't wait until, okay, the summer's coming, this kid's been out a whole lot of days, so now we're gonna file, because you're afraid this kid's gonna be out of your eyesight, so all the reports come in at the end of the school year. You'd get bombarded, I know that from having worked there. But if there's kids who the problem is truancy, why don't we look at, okay, the school You know what children are involved with, what service. If they're out, there should be a way to connect so that a social worker can go and check, can make a visit that day. Is the child sick? Was there something wrong? Why couldn't the child get to school? I think it's better than, well, the child just didn't come to school. Like, I wish they worked together.
Well, I think we're seeing a huge uptick in those relationships across agencies. As a result of the Almond case, we've been intricately involved with all of the state agencies in problem solving. We've had great productive, school committee member Costas, several meetings ago, said, put it on the agenda to create a commission. Just so we now have a commission that's been meeting, and they'll release yet again another report of where we are in those relationships with DCF is on the commission. First time ever. So these relationships, I think, are going to improve. In terms of the total numbers of truant attendance officers, we have 7. We now have a pilot where we bought, thanks to Ken, 3 vehicles that fully fitted with Fall River Public Schools logo, and they're going to be working in some extreme cases, actually going and picking up students who have been truant to get them into school. We have outreach workers that we've put in place. We're doing all of the right things. It takes time. I just released an attendance report. I don't know if you guys have a copy of it. I'll send it to Council President Pont so we can share it with the committee. We did, this year's attendance, there was a huge, we've been making progress over the last 4 years, and in the past year with the pandemic, chronic absenteeism was very high, not only in Fall River, but across the state. So we did an analysis of this, particularly at the secondary level. Now, I have 2 high school kids, one just graduated in my own house. Speaking with them and their friends and seeing that it's been tough for high school kids, as you mentioned, like some of the folks, if you think about like you and I, like socializing, let's say. But then there's a whole other group of kids that, because of the pandemic, were able to shut out and then kind of just turned off.
Yeah, because I did look, I'm sorry to interrupt you, I'm sorry, Linda. I did look at the Stone School. It's
Yeah.
like 85% chronically absent.
So chronically absent is 10% of the school year. If you miss 10%, whether it's excused or unexcused, you're chronically absent. So those rates have been very high across Fall River Public Schools. I'll get you the report so you have it, and you also see what we're doing. And I think we've worked so hard, and we were making tremendous progress before the pandemic of decreasing chronic absenteeism, which we did. We decreased our suspension rates, which we did. We increased student attendance. We increased staff attendance, building the incentives that we built into the last contract and hopefully in this contract as well. So granted, we were making huge progress, and then the pandemic hit. But we're going to come out of this, and I think we'll be right back where we were. We got all the same people, and we got the changes that we've been able to make to really target and identify some of the hardest cases.
Well, I'm really happy to hear about the commission and that DSS is now at the table too. It's unfortunate that a tragedy like that had to occur for something to come together. I said that maybe 15, 20 years ago.
Yep.
You need to work together. You need to be able to communicate. I mean, when I worked there, it was Harry Hassoun that, had a lot of the cases that I had, or Lisa Valancourt, great truant officers who were out there, going to homes, going jointly to a home to help people. So it wasn't, in an adversarial way, it's very comforting that, look, we're here to help you, what's the problems, et cetera. And some kids just don't want to get up, they don't want to go to school, and a parent doesn't know how to handle that and can't beat the kid up because then I would be there, you know what I mean? But what are other things that you can do as a parent? And they need help too, especially if it's a single parent household. It's not easy raising kids, with more than one person, let alone. And the one thing that I'm very happy to hear is that you're talking about bringing back sort of the peaceful coalition that had gone on with Mr. Lee and Mr. Corey years ago at Durfee. That was a great program
We're in the progress
I hated
of
to see-
rebuilding that initiative. We think it's needed in the community, and I'm excited that I got the right people at the table right now to help us really build something that has traction. And I just, if I may just ask one more thing, we talk about special education, it's 20% of our students. That's how many students are on IEPs. So you think about 20% of the budget, it's actually much more than that because it's better, but that's one-fifth of who we are. So it's a huge focus for us. School committee, over the last 2 years, created a standalone assistant superintendent for special education. That's how important this is to the school committee in terms of the work we're doing to improve programs.
I mean, it's unfortunate to hear those numbers, but they are the reality, and we need to figure out, how we can work with them. And certainly, 3 of my granddaughters are in high school, my grandson's in elementary school. But through the pandemic and working at home on computers, I've got to tell you, shout out to Mrs. Thurston. She is an awesome teacher. I was just there in the kitchen, and he was, it's not only you had to teach children virtually, but you almost had to be an actress or an actor to keep them involved. And hey, where are you? Come back on it. I used to teach in another lifetime, and I give the teachers, the paras, the parents so much credit because it really wasn't a great year, but I give them credit. It was a lot more work than people thought for the faculty. And if you could raise some of those salaries, especially for the paras and the teachers, you're going to keep people. We have the same issue on the city side, so I'm not saying, you're not paying your people. The city side has the same issues. I mean, we have an engineer, a city engineer lasts for a little while. They leave, they're getting $20,000 more. Another one comes in, boop, they leave 15 minutes from home, $20,000 more.
We have a structural.
It becomes frustrating because with the same people working in the same jobs, there's that connectivity with everybody and everybody's on the same page and you develop relationships, you move things forward. And unfortunately, with salaries, people are just trying to survive, and if they get a little bit more money somewhere else, you can't blame them. They are going to leave. But all in all, thank you very much for your comments. And Mr. Pacheco, they're going to start moving furniture over to the new school?
Furniture will stop flowing
July?
into the building by July 15th.
July 15th.
And it's all new furniture. It's all part of the construction project.
That's a crazy thing. You
But
build a school.
We'll be doing hand-me-downs now, so
Yeah.
what'll happen is we have a lot of new furniture at the high school, newer, I
Right.
should say. We're taking that newer furniture and moving that into the schools that didn't have that, and so on. So by the time we get to the end of this, most of it'll be ready for the junkyard. We're not leaving buildings like we found.
Like we
in,
did before? Thank you.
But there's,
But I think it's crazy sometimes. We're going to give you a certain percentage if you build a new school. However, if you build a new school, you got to get all new furniture, all new this, all new that. You can't, you buy one house, you move to another house, you don't leave all your furniture and go out and buy all new furniture, right? But the only way you can get the money from the state is that you have to follow the rules and everything's got to be new. I don't know who's making money, but
It's just all
I
part
think
of the
sometimes
formula.
it's a little bizarre.
Right.
It's like if you don't use all the money that you have, next year they're going to give you less because you figured it out without using it. So people are forced to spend every penny to be able to get the reimbursements next year. Government, one of the layers that I don't like, but with that I yield. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming in.
Counselor Lee, Counselor in C5, Counselor Lee.
Just a lot of questions were already asked throughout this process. But we've had some conversation about Watson and ADA compliance, and how far along are we on that?
so on the 17th of June, when the students leave, the ramp will be going in place and the excavation for the elevator shaft will start. We also will be demolishing the bathrooms in the basement to get those ready for the start of school. And then depending on scheduling, how quickly we can move through this, we'll continue on. We're expecting that the bidding process will be just about wrapped up by the end of June. And the stuff that's yet to do at Watson, some of it's time sensitive, but there's a ton of it that we're going to be doing as students are there. So that we'll be able to get that project. We're hoping to wrap everything up by mid to late December.
Okay, thank you. On that, regarding some of the crises that we've been going through in this city, we had a 14-year-old and a 29-year-old killed just recently, and that permeates throughout, not just through the city council, but I'm sure through the school department as well. What was the response? And I'm trying to frame this in terms of budget. What was the response as far as investments in violence prevention, drug crime, gang prevention? I mean, there's so many elements to when you see that much violence in the streets. What was the response from an investment standpoint? Like, for example, Council Vice President wanted to invest in the school department, in the police department from the city side. What was the response from the school in that sense?
So I can answer your question this way. We lost a 14-year-old student who was a student at RPA in a shooting after school in a park over here in Corky Road that was
Griffin Park, yeah.
filled with other students from other schools.
Yep.
In terms of our response, we managed the crises on the ground as it happened to support, as the police were doing their work. We ensured that we didn't have other buses dropping off kids at that exact point. We rerouted all of our transportation. We were on scene to answer any questions and help in any way that we could. And the follow-up support was all of the crisis management that we deployed at several schools for a full week that followed, plus some additional police supports as needed based on some of the information that was gleaned through the investigations. So in terms of our response to crisis management, that's one thing. In terms of the long-term commitment investment.
Prevention, yeah.
In prevention, I mean, this is ongoing work that we do. I think you've seen that, the school committee now has 3 assistant superintendent roles. Assistant superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of special education, and assistant superintendent of social emotional learning and integration, and equity, getting at issues of justice and all those types of things. So in terms of the work we're doing around curriculum development, the work we're doing to invest in anti-drugs, gangs, violence, those types of things. This
A lot of recruiting occurs at the ages.
Right, and we're very attuned to the reality that we have to do more. We're also been doing a lot of community engagement with various organizations to ensure that we're all working together, trying to provide more services, more outlets, more things for kids to do other than hang out on the block. And this is the, I mean, this is the long-term foxhole to foxhole work that it takes to change a mindset, to provide hope and access to opportunity. It's the deep stuff that cities do.
Okay, so I just wanted to know, specific, because we are talking about budget, and I know that most of these things occurred while you were putting these together. Were there any budgetary expenses involved in, in response to this specific event that occurred?
Well, so budgetary responses involved.
It's okay if
amassing.
it's not. I just was curious about it.
We responded and we attached tremendous amounts of people power, which costs money. So there's likely some overtime costs, plus some additional costs that we had with protective safety in terms of some additional PD supports that we had as part of this work. And we also, school committee approved just before that, another additional SRO, which will be part of the FY22 budget as well, if approved. And in terms of the curriculum instruction, our investment in the the work that we're doing around, as Ms. Pereira, we mentioned, we're getting the initiative off the ground again to unite kids around issues such as violence and other things and work more closely with the police. So there's definitely expenditure in terms of the exact costs, I can't say.
It's fine.
But when you look at the total, next year's FY '22 budget, you can see the costs associated with our SEL curriculum and those types of things.
There are right now, again, and this is, we always have these kind of conversations after a crisis occurs or a tragedy occurs, where we talk about investing in the youth and we need to do more. And you talked about it just a little while about youth engagement. Are there any plans at all to have any kind of representative from the school department, either whether it be a youth representative or an adult, to go to these neighborhood association meetings that have been going around the city? Because I've gone to a couple of them. I know that there's a couple of councilors who have gone to them, and I want to just know if there's a school department role in any of these.
There definitely is. And at the school committee this coming Monday night, there's two job descriptions on the agenda where we're going to break apart a position to have a much more robust parent and community engagement role for the district. The brand-new assistant superintendent that we just hired, Dr. Taylor, will also now, things are opening up, I think you'll see her face a lot more in these community meetings. I've attended several neighborhood association meetings over the last 5 years. I think we have good relationships with these associations. We got to keep talking. We got to be at the table. I think we've been inclusive in terms of the work that we've done around equity, access, diversity, and justice. I think that the task force that we have in place involving community members and us being in some of the other community engagement activities, this is the work of the 21st century. So we're going to continue to do it. We're going to fund it. We're going to invest time and energy. It's the only way that a city will thrive, is if all components of the city are working together to combat the negativity of street violence, drugs, and other things that are detriments to us.
And just going back to the IEPs, you said that there was about 20% of your school
We're 20%
department.
special education in Fall River Public Schools.
No, you said special education. Is it just IEPs or is it, there's a combination of
It's IEPs and
504s?
504s, but IEPs are what designates as special education.
So the 20% is IEPs.
Yeah.
So then, is there a percentage on the 504s?
I don't have a percentage on the 504s.
Okay, all right, just curious. Now,
And I
both.
don't know, I can't answer the question if the department mingles the two.
Okay.
I don't know that because under federal guidance, I don't know if 504s would fall under the 76.
And the reason why I'm asking is based on the fact that if we have a higher number, because 504s are also, I mean, not technically special education, but they offer disability purposes, and
Yep.
they have costs to them, correct?
Yes, but not as mostly it's accommodations and modifications.
Okay.
So these are things that we're able to do. But sometimes with 504s, they're also time limited.
Right.
I broke my leg. That one, I'm healed, so I'm off the
Okay.
modification. So we manage these things, I think, and, as Council Kadim mentioned earlier, when we track and we give our monthly budget reports, the school committee can see exactly where we are with our expenditures by month.
Yep, okay. I just, it was a figure that, the 20% is a very high figure, so I just wanted to know in comparison to 504s.
You
It's- yeah.
also understand, though, it's like, why are we at 20%? Because we are the public school district.
Right.
So, every other city has the same percentages, because other schools don't take the same kinds of kids that we have. So therefore, that's where we are.
It's a reflection of, needs in the community for the most part, so. That I yield, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor in C4, Council Vice President.
I just had two questions that haven't been asked by other counselors. The orange line items in the budget under employees, does that mean that position is leaving?
The orange line items are the grant
Grant
folks. The grant funded.
No, up in the other, so I'm in Sylvia right now, so this one happens to say Lori Crockett, teacher, 5 gate, and then over in the, it says eliminate or addition, conversion to math coach. Does that mean staying in the same school or going to a different school?
It's staying in the same school, just that position's changing to another position.
Okay, but it is staying in that same school?
Yes.
Okay, that was just one question I had. And then the other question I had, I just wanted to add to what Counselor Lee was asking. I think I heard him asking if there is anything in the schools as far as gangs or violence prevention programs. And you were saying something about a curriculum, but I missed what
Great question. So
you had said.
the students from Morton who actually have come here presented to you guys, I did a Zoom with them a month ago, and they asked me specifically if we could bring back some of the guidance programming that was done with the Sheriff's Department a couple years ago. And so we're looking into bringing that back. I don't think it's gonna be a money problem for us, and we're gonna do more of that kind of outreach.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly what I was talking about. Counselor Deanna and I have spent a lot of time talking about this. We put a resolution in, because the last I checked with the Generation Citizen teacher, Mr. Blanchett, who's great, he had not heard back from the school committee. They were in front of, those students spoke in front of the school committee on May 10th. But they, the school committee unfortunately doesn't do any kind of a back and forth. It's thank you and good night. So they haven't heard back from the school committee. We spoke about it. We put a resolution in which we were hoping to partner with the school committee on. We spoke to the police chief, and his exact words were, this is not going to get better with more police. We need education, and we need it at a younger level.
Yep.
He said it's his belief that it belongs somewhere in the elementary school level. The 8th graders are asking for it at least at the 8th grade level, and not just at their school, but in all the middle schools. And what they were asking for was for, and this is, the Sheriff's Department did get back to them, was for a former or reformed gang member to come in and give their experience. And the Sheriff's Department said they'd be happy to work with them. Like I said, Councilor Dion has a resolution. We hope that we can make this work with the school department and get education into a middle school grade at the very least.
I like what you just said, Counselor, about the high end of the elementary level. And it's critical. We're on board. We're with you. I mean, I think the whole city's behind all this. So I don't know how to answer you other than to say, we agree and we're gonna be doing this work. So if you wanna share with me to get to the committee on the 14th is something that they can say, yep, we agree in principle, that's fine as well. But just so you know, we're bringing forward a new health curriculum on Monday night as well. And this part of the mental health and the social health core of it would be a great addition for us. So we're going down this road. I think the students have been great in all of our conversations that we've had with them. And I know the school committee was definitely very supportive of the ones who came and spoke at the last meeting. So no more need to be said on other than we're going to fund whatever it costs, and that's the bottom line.
Madam Clerk, would you please provide the superintendent with Councilor Dion's resolution? Thank you. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Before I acknowledge the last counselor that wants to speak, I want to wrap my head around this, the financial aspect of what we're here before, if we can. So, Mr. Alameda, help me understand a little bit, please. When you go to the Fonseca School, for instance, your yellow-green sheet, okay? Breaking that budget down, it shows us that non-grant positions, it's about $4.3 million worth of salaries. Now, to go to your other sheet in the beginning of the book where it says actual salaries broken down by each object for Fonseca, when I actually add those totals up for each, it doesn't equal the 4.3. Why?
Because it's an average across the district for every position.
So what does the school committee vote on?
They vote on a bottom line budget, which is I'll give you the exact figures. For this year, they voted on a school operating budget of $121,638,499 and a transportation figure of $11 million.
Okay, so do you see how this can be somewhat confusing to people who read the budget books? Because you guys continuously do this, and it frustrates me that the city council's been given a budget where it's just, the numbers for the schools don't actually add up to what they really are. Like, I don't know, counselors who have been on the school committee, I'm so curious to find out, is this typical practice?
Yeah, I think what you're missing is that at the point of the building of the budget, they don't know who's gonna be in what schools. There are transfers, so that's why they do the averages. So your first, or whatever the tab is, gives you the
Right.
actual salaries for each employee, so you can see and make sure it ties out. But when you go to specific schools, because you don't know at the time of who's gonna be the teacher in that school and what step and all that other stuff, that's why they take the average, to give you a better understanding.
So are you saying that it's more common to have extra turnover in your salary line item at the end of the year because of the way you budget this?
I wouldn't say that. What the reality is, what happens in the schools is we have somebody in a position that's been, I could have a person that's in a position today that I don't know about, that costs me currently $75,000 or $76,000.
Right.
And come September 1st, because that person all of a sudden resigned on August 31st, cost me $42,000. So that happens over and over and over again on the school side. So there is, I will tell you, there's salary savings every year, but the salary savings happen through that process.
Right.
Through positions, for whatever reason, being vacant for a period of time because we couldn't fill the position or whatever. But that happens over and over again. So, you know, we have roughly 2,000 employees on the school side, part-time and full-time. So there's a lot of turnover because it's a big organization that we run. And so, you know, we've used this method. We use this method to identify every single position in the school, so you can see so the committee can see, so the city council can see how many positions we have in each school, what grade level positions we have, how many paras, so on and so forth, so that it's a clear indication as to the number of staff that are actually supporting the students in that school. So, you know, that's the model we've used for the last several years in preparing the budget. And you've requested, you know, and we've provided you know, Councilor Kadim remembers, we used to provide budgets without names in it. And so, you know, we've provided names, we've provided salaries, we've provided everything in the front so that you have that information, so.
Okay, so I get it, it's just, it's hard, not necessarily hard to follow, but it's just, it bothers me.
Understood.
And I know it's going on deaf ears. The school committee does what the school committee wants to do. It's totally on them. It's just when I look at a budget book, I don't want to be bouncing around 4 different pages to find out what each school is. It just, it bothers me.
Perhaps next year, it would be a good idea if at least the council president, if we did individual budget presentations after we do it with the school committee. So you could very clearly understand what it is that's being requested and why and how.
Yeah, I mean, my request really hasn't been over the last couple of years that we need to, you know, really do that, Mr. Superintendent. It's more along the lines of, like, I want to look at Durfee High School, and I want to look at, if I have to look at the name or without the name, I see principal, and then I see 88.6. I darn well know that the principal of Durfee High School isn't getting paid 88.6.
Right, and so it requires a little bit more digging, but I mean,
Right,
what I'm
that's
trying
what-
to say is I can answer any question that you had.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. It's just more, I guess, the formatics of the way the budget is being presented to us that is frustrating, and it's been like that for 5 years.
It has.
I've been elected for 6, and I'm sure it's gonna be the same thing next year. It's frustrating to me. So, that's my opinion.
I appreciate your comment, and I'm gonna again offer more collaboration the coming fiscal year.
So do we have any idea regarding transportation, if we could use any of the ESSER 2 funds for transportation?
So I believe under the law, you can use it for what you would call
Yeah,
transportation.
additional or extraordinary transportation costs. But again, that would have to be approved by the school committee because it's an outside of net school expense. But the city could use their monies for transportation. Remember, there's two parts of money. The school money and the municipal side. So the city could use a municipal, since it is a municipal expense, their money to fund additional transportation. We can always fund it on our side through the appropriation of the school committee for any extra additional costs.
So let's just say hypothetically speaking that it's the city council's purview, that we take $5 million of transportation, use it to pay some of the debt that the city has for some of the schools, Durfee High School for example, and then the school department use $5 million of their, how much million in ESSER 2 funds?
17 million.
17 million of ESSER 2 funds. Let's just say it's 5 million of that, of the 17 million. That's just this fiscal year too, Mr. Almeida, correct?
That's ESSER 2. That's our ESSER 2 allocation.
Yeah, you're getting two allocations. You're getting one
We have
this year,
three,
next
we have three in total.
Three in total, okay. So is it total, ESSER 2 is total 17 million, you said?
ESSER 2 is 17.4 million. ESSER
Okay.
3 is 39.1 million.
ESSER 3 is 39 million. Okay, so my question is, can the city take $5 million from transportation, you replace it for, and I know that essentially could set up a structural deficit in future years, but if we account for it and budget for it going forward, why can't we have that conversation?
Because transportation's your cost. And
Okay,
I'm
but
not
the
gonna
school
speak-
committee
I'm not going
approves
to
it,
speak
right?
for the school committee tonight, but that's a question you could put in writing to them, and I'll get you a response back in writing.
Okay. That I will do that then. Because when the schools are getting millions and millions and millions of dollars, and respectfully, I know that you haven't had any layoffs, I know you haven't given any pink slips over the last couple of years, but the Chapter 70 formula that the schools have been given over the last couple of years has made it much easier for the schools to operate, because the way the equation is, the schools in every city is getting more money from the state. So
Right,
it's
but-
making your job a lot easier.
I wouldn't say that. I will also say to you, there are 3 communities in Massachusetts that are at 100 or below of net school spending. We're one of 3. So even though Chapter 70 has gone up, we're still at the very bottom under requirement of law as to what we should be funding for education. And I think we need to do better of that over time, and that's why I continuously build budgets above 100%. And in terms of the Student Opportunity Act, which now has 6 more years, and thank God for Tom Corey and Rebecca Cusick, who helped get that law passed. That will have significant implications for us in the positive, as long as our student enrollment stays consistent. So it doesn't, Chapter 70 doesn't necessarily make the job easier, it just makes us, we have to be smarter and wiser and strategic in how we forecast and budget each year.
Okay, so I will present my concern on the transportation side to you via email tomorrow. You can share it with members of the school committee.
But if I can just comment, so why, I can understand the logic behind it, but why would we create a structural deficit moving forward when we know we have, let's say, $11 million in transportation every year?
Well, we can be creative with the way we balance where you allocate your budget in future fiscal years. So just because you take $5 million doesn't mean you can't do future planning down the road.
No, I get that,
So-
I get that, but we know without like a major overhaul in transportation's gonna be $11 million, roundabouts on a yearly basis, you
Right.
know what I mean? So,
And I get that. and I
that's
don't-
why I'm asking, I'm just asking.
Yeah, I
a
don't
question.
want to necessarily set up a structural deficit, like, that's why I said no to the
Okay.
budget last year, right?
Okay.
So I'm just saying, the schools are getting upwards of 39 plus the $17 million from the federal government. The city of Fall River is getting $69 million from the federal government. we, and I'm just speaking out loud, Mr. Almeida, want to create task forces to figure out how we're going to spend $70 million on the city, and I don't know what the schools are going to do. So I guess I'm trying to look at it from a taxpayer perspective. When I look at the schools getting over $40 million that I don't necessarily know, unless you guys know and haven't shared it with us, on how you plan on spending that money.
So, as I told you, we're out gathering information now, but you can expect that we will deepen our investment in our Student Opportunity Act priorities. So much more community engagement, much more second language acquisition, much more sped supports, and at the same time, we have to upgrade our facilities. So there was going to be investments made across the district using these federal dollars, but if I were you, when you say, how do you tell taxpayers, you would say, look, taxpayer, it is a city responsibility to cover the transportation. That is under the law in terms of what's required for net school spending. So it is a burden, but it's a burden that every other municipality in Massachusetts has, transporting its kids to and from school.
Okay, thank you. I won't ask any more questions at this point. Council Pelletier?
Yeah, the new school, you guys found something wrong with the roof. As a rule, we don't find anything wrong with the roof till 2 years later. So, who fixed it and who incurred the cost? Was it our cost or the contractor's?
Contractor's cost.
And
Contractor fixed it, is fixing it, yes.
how big was that job? Was the whole roof or just part of it?
Just the pitched roof, the peak roof in the front of the building,
Yeah,
close to $1 million.
$1 million, so they're gonna pay
That's
for
what
it.
you have insurance for.
Yeah. The transportation, you guys signed a contract for 5 years with these guys?
It's a 5-year contract and we sign, and the contract renews each year.
So you won't see any increase in that for 4 more years, that is?
You'll see a cost of living increase,
Cost of living.
There's a built-in escalator. But there's no renegotiation and there's no set percentage, but there is an escalator in it, yes. But we continue to do route surveys. We continue to make sure that we're only using what we have to use. So it's an ongoing thing. When Kevin says that we're gonna be around $11 million, it's because even with the escalator, we may be able to maintain those costs and keep those costs at a set number.
And the cost of material, as you know and I know, has all gone up. Do you see a spike in the final bill for the school? And
We've seen increases as time goes on. There are certain requests that are coming through with contractors for COVID. The extent to those, we're not quite sure yet as to how many requests we're gonna receive. Normally what would happen on construction at any time is the owner is put on notice. So basically you'd receive a letter through the owner's project manager from a contractor saying, we are putting you on notice that the cost of blank is going up. And we may need to talk to you about that. In a lot more words and a lot more legal jargon than that. But that's standard construction procedure. It happens all the time, whether it was COVID or not. There's always that situation where the product just skyrockets in price. We don't see it normally go the other way, in our favor.
That's for sure.
But you always see that kind of thing, and that's just standard with construction. Obviously, COVID brought out a few more issues. I mean, there was a lot going on. There was one individual on this project that did nothing but sanitize 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, just spraying handrails, making sure the porta-johns are clean, making sure the sinks are clean, adding paper towels, doing all the things that just COVID related. That's a laborer doing that work day in and day out on that project. So that's a cost that was not built into the project.
Right.
That's a COVID-related cost.
When we had 300 employees,
Right,
workers
exactly.
on site every day, it was essentially cleaning up 300 people all day for a period of time where we're at the peak of the spread.
All right, you got X amount of dollars for the school,
Yes.
and now we incur another $5, $6, $7 million.
So there's contingency in the project, so we start a project knowing full well that we're not going to catch everything. It's impossible to. So you start the project with a certain pot of money that's put aside for any situations that you can't foresee. And that pot of money is used throughout the project when you come across something that needs to be corrected. You also take into consideration that we do VE, value engineering. So we're seeing that the project is running a little hot in a certain area. What can we do to help out? Maybe it's the landscaping. So maybe we cut from 150 trees or 200 trees, we cut it down to 75. Maybe some of the islands go from 5 feet wide in a parking lot to 3 feet wide. There's all kinds of things that happen in the course of the project. So the project, the budget for the project, although the end number is pretty solid and should be, there's a lot that goes on between the day you break ground and the day you end up. The project does change, and all of that value engineering happens throughout the project. So that's how you try and maintain that end number, by doing this work.
And if it doesn't work, where do we get the money? Go back for a loan to pay for the rest?
We will deliver the project.
What's that?
We will deliver the project. We won't be coming back to you.
At the
We
monies
won't be
that you
coming back
get
to you
without
for
borrowing
loan.
no more?
Yes. We'll deliver the project one way or another.
It's a big statement.
Can I say?
That's the trust that was bestowed on us, we have to.
All right, the Watson School,
Yes.
that's gonna be finished, that's gonna take some of the pressures off the other schools with, the handicap facility?
Basically, it's just gonna make that building what it should be, and that's
Yeah.
accessible. So it's not gonna take any pressure off. We're just not gonna have a student walk up to the front door on a day that they broke a leg or want to go to that school because that's their neighborhood school and not be able to attend it because it's not accessible. So we want that neighborhood school to be accessible to every student in the neighborhood. And that's all that this whole project has been about. Obviously, the upgrades, the air conditioning, making it a better learning environment, the electrical upgrades. This is a school that, when we were doing testing at times, we couldn't have everybody testing at the same time because we didn't have enough power. So that's the kind of stuff that we were dealing with some of the older schools. We were talking about the Stone School earlier, and Council Kadim it was a bad day that day when the roof blew off, and we were there, standing there, looking outside. But at the end of the day, the good of that project is that the Stone School was able to move from what it had on Globe Street to a facility that received about $7 million worth of funds, both city funds and insurance proceeds. And now that building is totally accessible with many upgrades, and that's where Watson is gonna be.
So all the schools now, all ADA?
In one way, shape, or form, they are, yes. So we have a couple of schools that still need, some more work. We've done some major renovations at RPA, making that building accessible in the front of the building, which it never was accessible in the front of the building. So that building has an elevator, but it now is accessible from the front of the building, where everyone can walk in the same entrance.
I think the big question is how much, and I could never get an answer. When the school is done and the first bills go out, what do you think, or what is it, or do you have a set?
I can tell you
on the
that it's
taxes?
way, way above my pay grade, to give you that kind of answer. I'm sure that someone can give you that answer, but,
Well, I think,
I just gave you the biggest promise I could possibly do, and if I don't deliver, I have to move out of the city, and that is to bring the project in on time. I can't give you more than that, Lynn,
well,
I'm sorry.
it would be nice if the people knew. They know it's coming.
Yes, they do.
They don't exactly know when,
And overwhelmingly, they
next
like
year,
the
the
idea.
year after.
And they,
but how much? That's the thing.
I understand.
That's the thing, and we should have somebody say, hey, I think it's gonna be this, at least, well, you get an idea. $50 per quarter, $100 per quarter, you can think about it and say, well, I gotta cut this down, and don't go for dinner this night because we gotta pay for the school, but, you know, what is it gonna cost? I think we all should know what it's gonna cost. We're spending the money, we know we're gonna have to pay. They voted to say we'll put the school in, but never got a firm commitment. That's what I'm looking for. And the only other thing, you have influx of a lot of new people coming into the city of Fall River, getting housing in the city of Fall River. And how's the numbers? There's more kids that are moving into the city because of our school system or not?
So, you heard me mention earlier that this last year was an anomaly. Because of the pandemic, we're down 210 students from the prior year. We can expect those students to come back this coming year as we continue to roll out more classrooms for 4-year-olds, plus now that we have, fully rolled out a full day for 5-year-olds. We've seen an uptick in immigration, migration to Fall River. Just looking at our second language numbers, 5 years ago, we were at like 4%, and we're now upwards of 18%. That's a fast demographic shift. 2 years ago, we became a minority school district for the first time ever. So you see the numbers shift. In terms of total numbers, though, I cannot say to you until we see what we have in front of us this fall, whether or not the new building is attracting more students. We're getting a lot of calls,
No, it's the
folks
city.
talking about.
The city and the school.
Yeah, the city and school. I mean, look, we're a city on the rise, right? I mean, people are gonna wanna move here. Let's just be honest about that, right? We got great housing stock, we got awesome stuff down on the water. We're building more and more cool stuff for people that wanna go out to dinner and do stuff. It's a great city, right? So we build this brand-new high school, there's gonna be more and more families that are gonna wanna stay here. So I think it's a time of growth for us, which will be a good deal in terms of our revenues.
How many school kids you get now?
10,170.
That's the highest you've seen?
No. Just 2 years ago, we were at 10,450.
All right, well.
And I hope, we built the high school based on all the demographic study to serve 2,500 kids. And right now, at Durfee, there's 2,000 students, so we're gonna see some growth.
So what do we got, the Spanish communities?
We have a large influx of Spanish-speaking residents, plus we're seeing more Brazilian speakers, but not from the Azores or the mainland, more South American from Brazil. We have an increase in Middle Eastern students. We still get Caribbean, French-speaking from Haiti and
And if
a
they
couple
move
other
to the
places.
city of Fall River, you gotta provide them with education.
So, under the
Right.
law, every single child that shows up at your door between the ages of 3 for special ed kids and 19, we are obligated to provide them a free public education. We built great programs at the secondary level. I think you're gonna see, one of the things, with this overage, underaccredited, that's a real demographic point when we think about all the bad stuff that can happen in kids' lives. So we've built tremendous pathways with both the early college programs with BCC, UMass, Dartmouth, and Bridgewater State. What we're doing at RPA, credit recovery.
All
I
right,
think
I
you're
get
gonna
the
see us
picture.
build more and more programs.
I get the picture. I'm not gonna prolong it, but it'd be nice, we get the school wrapped up, but it'd be nice to know what the taxpayers are gonna pay as well. And with that, I yield, Mr. President.
Thank you. Hearing no further questions,
Can I just make a comment?
Councilman seat 8, Council Pereira.
I just want to make a comment. I did attend the Alumni Association award ceremony that they had. 2 members of alumni of Durfee were awarded. But what impressed me was the 21 students that were there, all graduates of Durfee, and the prestigious colleges and universities that they're going to. It's unfortunate that that's not filmed and we don't focus more on the positive, on the kids that are doing really good things in the community, and going places and going far.
We're
And
very
I think
happy
that
with
sometimes we as a community are our own worst enemy. It's easy to gripe about things, you know, than push all the positive that's going on. And Mr. Pacheco, I'm gonna hold you to that, we're gonna be in that school.
You got it. If you-
Well, just a shout out to those
If I
students.
don't answer my phone, it's not because I've left town.
We appreciate the fact that you were at that event.
Yeah, it was
And
great.
we thank you for that, but I also, just from me to you, I want to thank you for the Vietnam Memorial Dedication
Oh,
Day.
great committee I
I
worked
brought my
with.
father, and he brought one of his buddies, both are combat vets, Marines. One lost a leg there, and they were both blown away by how eloquent and amazing. And then when it was over, they sat for an hour, they didn't want to leave.
That was wonderful.
And that was probably one of the most beautiful days that we've had here, under the time that I've been here. When I tell people about Fall River, that's what I talk about, the commitment to each
Marvelous
other.
committee to work with.
And, yeah, so I wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome, but it was really a very great committee to work with. And people are going down there, these warm days. You know, we have some new grass there. People have been walking down there, going by there, dropping flowers, you know, it is a tourism site, and we need to promote it as such, that there are worthwhile things. I mean, I look, the next thing that's coming up is the, you know, Preservation Committee. I look at some of what they have with historic buildings. You go to Charleston or whatever, and they have these, you know, Victorian houses, and I was there with my husband, like, this is nothing, Fall River, we've got better than this. How do we promote that? Do you know what I mean? We do have a lot of good things. We just need to learn how to promote ourselves better. But thank you for being here and all the work that you do, and a shout out to those graduates.
Thank you. Hearing no further
Motion to
questions.
adjourn finance?
Motion to adjourn
Second.
finance made by Councilor
Second.
Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. 2-minute recess. 2 minutes. Clerk.
It's good.
Councilors Kadim? Here. Dion?
Here.
Kilby?
Here.
Lullaby LeBeau? Lee?
Here.
Peckham?
Here.
Pelletier?
Yeah.
Pereira?
Here.
And President Ponti.
Here, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person, actually, everybody in the chamber could please rise for a moment of silent prayer. Thank you, and a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible.
Can we take item 6E from the agenda?
Motion to take item 6E out of order, which is the Community Preservation Act funds, has been made by Councilor Pereira,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Lee. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. 6E.
The Committee on Finance, at a meeting held on June 8th, voted unanimously to recommend that the accompanying order be referred to the full council for action, and this would be the CPC FY22 funding recommendations.
Is there a motion? Motion to adopt would be the appropriate
Motion to
one.
adopt.
Motion to
Second.
adopt CPCs made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Pereira. Discussion on the adoption. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Next order of business, Madam. Thanks, guys.
Great job, good work. On that.
Next order of business.
Yeah.
We have the mayor's request for the confirmation of the appointment of Dawn Surratt to the Port
Motion to
Authority.
deny.
Motion to adopt the appointment?
Motion to deny has been made by Councilor
Second.
Dion. Is there a second to the motion to deny?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion. Councilor in seat 2, Councilor Dion.
Yeah, the Fall River State Pier is property is one of several state piers owned by the Commonwealth of Mass. It is operated by Fall River Line Pier, Inc. as a marina terminal for general cargo and break bulk industry, as well as commercial fishing vessels, ferry service, and the cruise ship industry. The site is accessible by 2 deep water berths, on-site rail, and a trucking fleet in close proximity to the interstate highway system. A berth is a term used in ports and harbors for a designated location where a vessel may be moored, usually for the purposes of loading and unloading. Berths are designated by the management of a facility, for example, Port Authority Harbor Master. Vessels are assigned to the berths by these authorities. And the reason I read that, in the last few years, there's been a push, even by this administration, to put people on boards and committees with expertise and experience. Though this individual's resume would definitely match some boards and some committees, this individual definitely has no expertise or experience related to the duties of the board or any facet of the operational needs of the state pier. And I think if we're going to talk about expertise and experience, then we need to follow through with our expectations. And then my other issue, which kind of saddens me a bit, in this resume, under community involvement, one of the things this individual mentions is that she is the creator and operator of the Highland Neighborhood Watch Facebook page. And on this Facebook page, there was a post, and I'm only going to read the first two and the last three sentences. First two sentences, I really thought I was done with local politics. Then the world was turned upside down, and I watched Paul E. Coogan hold strong as a newly elected mayor. This is why I am collecting signatures for Paul Coogan's nomination for re-election. Now is not the time for a change, but for the stability of continuity. If you would like to sign his nomination papers, I will happily bring them to you. I have nothing against her supporting the mayor. I have nothing against her collecting signatures. I have nothing against his re-election. However, you often hear people refer to the weight and gravity of perception in given situations such as this. And unfortunately, this appointment is a textbook example of the appearance, I say the appearance, of political patronage and represents a conflict of interest at the least. And those are the reasons why I made the motion to deny and cannot approve this appointment. And with that, I yield.
Thank you. Now the Councilor Peckham.
Okay, my issue with this as well is, there's been a lot of talk recently about what is going on at the State Line Pier. I've seen it on Facebook, I've received messages, there was a citizens input letter written tonight. I would like the administration to come before us. They're asking us to appoint people to the Port Authority. I also, and to my understanding, there's also a committee out of the State Line Pier. I want to know what the plans are for the future of the State Line Pier before we start appointing people to positions. I would like to know who they're answering to. I would also like to know from the administration if there's been any paid positions by, that might be my mic.
It's on very
I want to know if there was any paid positions put forward by the mayor or the city of Fall River at the pier itself. I want to know what role the city is going to play at the State Line Pier, what questions these people on the Port Authority are going to have to answer, or what decisions they're going to have to make. I just would like a rundown from the administration of what's been going on at the State Line Pier for the last 3 months. Again, I don't think we should be appointing people to positions or committees to work with whatever we have going on down there without the city council knowing first. And with that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor in seat 5, Councilor Lee.
Yeah, just looking at the responsibilities of the Fall River Port Authority Board is responsible to assure regulatory compliance, environmental compliance, and safe waterways. The board shall recommend to the council solutions to problems brought to their attention by the public proposals for improvements of maintenance and waterways. So I looked at this first before I even looked at the names of the people who were being recommended. And I just looked for anything that resembled any kind of experience in this specific definition, which is on the Fall River website. So it's for anyone's consumption. I didn't even take the extra steps that you took, Council Seat 2, about like the Facebook, page and supporting Mayor Cook. I didn't even know that until she mentioned that. So, I mean, that kind of adds more to it, in my opinion. But I just looked at the basic qualifications of the individual, and I don't have anything against the person personally. I did look at the resume thoroughly. They do appear, just as you said, that they could be qualified for some other positions that are out there for boards, but this specific one, I didn't even see any relative experience to this at all, and I just, I feel like I would be rubber stamping if I was to say yes to this. So, that I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Council in C4, Council Vice President.
Thank you. So I reached out to some members of the executive board. The State Line Pier they have two boards. They have the Fall River Line Pier Board, and they also have the executive, the governing board. These three appointments are going on the executive board. I'm sorry, two appointments. There should be a third one coming. It's my understanding that two people have been removed and one person has resigned who is unhappy at some things that are happening here. I did speak to them about, experience being necessary to be on this board, and also, who manages it, because when you look online, the website, it's a little bit confusing. It's a state pier, but it's actually run by the city and Mass Development, and it used to be DCR. They also, when I spoke to them, there is a manager of the state pier, and to answer Councilor Peckham's question, the manager has retired, and she's actually been gone for a little bit. A 4-month temporary contract to manage the pier on a temporary basis has been given to, as they said it, the Office of Economic Development. I think that's called something else now, but OED. They're 2 months into this contract, the 4-month temporary contract. They haven't voted on it. They haven't had a meeting. They were asked to hold off on having a meeting. I don't know if it's until they got new members on board or what the reason is for that. But I agree. I would ask you, Council President, to have the administration let us know what their plans are. They seem to be, they're removing half of the board or replacing half of the board. They have the Office of Economic Development. They've been given a 4-month contract to run it, and that's something that's never been told to this council. Something that's never been told to this council, and it's something that the executive board hasn't voted on. So I'm not really sure the ins and outs of who gets to approve those things, if the mayor just is allowed to give out contracts on a temporary basis. I also know that they have not advertised the position yet, although they said this kind of position they might not necessarily have to, because they've gotten applications. However, they have not interviewed anyone either.
We will send a letter, Madam Clerk, to the mayor asking us if he could provide us some summary of what the long and short-term plans are with the Port Authority as requested by Council Vice President, please. You yield, Councilor?
I yield, thank you.
Councilor in seat 1, Councilor Kadim.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just going to echo my statements with Councilor in seat 4. I think I may not necessarily have issues with the nominations that came before us, but I think Councilor in C2 does bring up some good points in terms of, when we're making appointments to different boards, that there should have some type of experience or added value to the situation, not to suggest the two individuals before us tonight do not. My concern really, I think, kind of grew maybe about a month ago when I received a call from a counselor on this council asking me if I was aware that that the director, or whatever the title of the position was, had been let go, and that Mr. Fiola was put in and would be overseeing the Port Authority. So I think that in itself just, again, raises a lot of concerns and red flags. Just the fact that we're not really made aware of what's really transpiring in terms of some important parts of the city, the Port Authority being a major part of the city and the waterfront itself, and what we've got going on for development. So I think at the least I'd be willing to table it, but there is a motion to deny, so I'll support that, but it's not necessarily a support to deny the individuals before us, but really to hold off and have the administration come down and kind of give us a heads up or an explanation as to what is really taking place with the Port Authority, what we can expect, and if the various boards are not even aware or have not had the opportunity to vote on that. I think that in itself is concerning. Quite frankly, I'm not even sure what the what their bylaws read, or how the roles and responsibilities play out. So I think as a council, that's something that I'd like to see in terms of either bylaws or charters, if that exists for the Port Authority, just to get a little bit more information on how those things should be executing. Because at the end of the day, I know we take a lot of leeway with some of the appointments that come down here, and we have faith in the administration, in the appointment recommendations that they're making. But again, to Council Lee's point, I think it's, from a rubber standpoint, we just need to make sure we're doing our due diligence with this. So, having somebody removed, a year or a year and a half, and I don't know if that's accurate, prior to the expiration of a contract. I don't know if there was any issues with performance or anything like that. So these are the types of things that I think we should be talking about. And if there's a change in the operation over there, I think, as a courtesy heads up as to what direction we're moving in. So with that, I'll be supporting the motion that's before us.
Yeah, anything further, Councilor in seat 8, Councilor
Yeah,
Pereira?
I have a question. I don't want to support a motion to deny if what the council wants is to send a letter to the mayor and get more information as to what the job description is, et cetera. I would rather have a motion to table until we get that. If you deny, you know what I mean?
Is that your motion?
And I don't know, does a motion to table take precedent over a
Yeah.
motion to deny?
That was a question I was
Was
gonna
it
ask.
seconded? I don't even remember.
Yeah, the motion to deny was made and seconded, but I'll entertain the motion to table.
Second.
Then I'll
Motion to
take a
table.
motion to table.
There's no discussion after a motion to table.
I'll
Motion
second.
has been made,
I'll
Council
second.
Pelletier seconded.
has been made to table, has been made by Councilor Pereira, seconded by Councilor Pelletier. Roll call on the motion to table.
On the motion to table, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
No.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
No.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes.
The second item is the mayor's request for the appointment of Patrick Norton to the Port Authority.
Motion to adopt the appointment?
Motion to table?
Motion to table has been, motion to table has been made by Councilor Dion. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Pelletier. Roll call.
On the motion to table, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes.
Mr. President, just a point of information.
Point of information.
Yes, so the two items that we just tabled, will you be requesting that the administration come down to give us a presentation or update on the Port Authority, or do you need a resolution to be filed for that?
I'm going to send a communication to the mayor. If after the agenda, if a councilor wants, I think it'd probably be appropriate to file a resolution at the end of the agenda. I'll entertain it and refer it to the administration to come down and give us a full presentation about what their long and short-term plan of it is. So, Madam Clerk, if maybe our Secretary to the Council would be able to write a very brief, and we'll discuss it at the end of the agenda this evening. Thank you. Next order of business.
Next order of business is the mayor's communication in an order establishing spending limits for the fiscal year '22 revolving funds.
Motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor Kilby,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Pereira. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Have the mayor's communication and the order accepting the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 funds in the amount of $34,799,571.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor Lee, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion. I just want to make one comment. I know that there was a resolution that was filed. I believe Councilor Dion sponsored the resolution, was one of the sponsors of the resolution, that is being referred to ordinance that the city council approve all funding that comes from American Rescue Plan. So I feel comfortable supporting, obviously, we're not going to say no to accepting the money, but I just want the community to be aware that there is a resolution, it is referred to ordinance, that we do approve the funding that is taken out of here going forward.
The allocation, sir?
The allocation, that is correct. So we're getting $34 million this year, $34 million, I think it's at some point next year. So I just wanted the council to be aware. We have to accept the money, and we have an ordinance in subcommittee to put parameters in place here. So just so everybody's aware. I know there was a citizen's input on that this evening, too. A motion to adopt. Any further discussion? Hearing none, motion to adopt has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Item number 5 is the mayor's communication and an order accepting a $50,000 grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made by Counselor Lee, seconded by Counselor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it.
We have a number of recommendations to amend the traffic ordinance for the
Motion to
traffic
refer to
commission.
the ordinance committee.
Motion to refer to ordinance has been
Second.
made by Counselor Pereira, seconded by Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
We have a miscellaneous traffic ordinance for passage through second reading and enrollment.
Motion to pass through second reading and
Motion so
enrollment
made.
has been made by Counselor Peckham,
Second.
seconded by Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
We have the proposed ordinance that relates to solid waste for passage through second reading and enrollment.
Motion so made.
Motion to pass through
Second.
second reading and enrollment has been made by Counselor Peckham, seconded by Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Item 9 is the order granting permission to Mass Electric Company for a new pole location on Greenleaf Street.
To adopt?
Motion to
Second.
adopt has been made by Counselor Kilby, seconded by Counselor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Item 10 is the order granting permission to Mass Electric for a new pole on Ling Street.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has
Second.
been made by Counselor Peckham, seconded by Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Item number 11 is the order granting permission to Paula Oliveira at 307 Plain Street for removal of curbing.
Motion to adopt?
Motion to approve and adopt has been made by Counselor Kilby,
Second.
seconded by Counselor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
I have an order granting permission to Marcelino Reposo III at 173 Stafford Road for removal of curbing.
Motion to accept and
Motion to adopt has been made by Counselor Pereira, seconded by Counselor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Item 13 is the order granting permission to Sarah Rodricks at 333 Dunbar Street for removal of curbing.
Motion to
to approve
adopt
and
has
adopt.
been made by Counselor Pereira, seconded by Counselor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Item 14 is an order granting permission for the removal of curbing to Matthew Maderis at 33-35
Motion to
Ward
refer
Street.
Motion to
to public-
refer to public
public
safety, I mean
safety.
to,
Public Works and
Transportation.
Transportation. Motion to refer to Public Works and Transportation has been made by Counselor Pereira, seconded by Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Item 15 is the order granting permission to Eugene Merrithew at 676 Charles Street for removal of curbing.
Motion to approve has been made by Counselor Peckham, seconded by Counselor Lee. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Of the order granting permission to Todd Piva for removal of curbing at 180 Stetson Street.
Motion to approve has been made by Counselor Kilby,
Second.
seconded by
Second.
Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Of the police chief's report on licenses.
Motion to adopt and place on file.
Motion to accept the police chief's report has been made by Counselor Peckham,
Second.
seconded by Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Of the approval, the application of an auto repair shop, auto body shop license on behalf of Michael Carvalho at 958 County Street.
Motion to approve.
Motion
Motion to approve.
Made by Counselor Dion, seconded by Counselor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Have a number of claims.
Motion to refer to Corporation Council.
Motion to refer to Corporation Council has been made by Counselor Peckham, seconded by Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
I have a communication from One South Coast Chamber requesting permission to make a presentation to the council regarding the Fall River Arts and Culture Plan.
Motion to approve?
Do you want to refer it to a committee for that
Yes.
presentation? Why don't we refer that to Economic Development and Tourism?
Second.
Counselor Pereira?
I did speak with them, and I said that, you know, to come and do a presentation in front of the council right now, June, budget time, it's kind of tough. But if you, I'll request it to go to my committee. If it goes to my committee, we will hear it. We're working with two groups trying to work together. I've already talked to the two attorneys about it, and we'll see. So going to that committee would be appropriate.
Motion to refer to Economic Development and Tourism has been made by Counselor Lee, seconded by
Second.
Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
We have minutes of the city council public hearing held on May 25th.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve has been made by Counselor Peckham, seconded by
Second.
Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
And we have minutes of the May 11th City Council meeting.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve has been made by Counselor Dion, seconded by Counselor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Committee on Ordinances and Legislation at a meeting held on June 3rd voted unanimously to recommend that the accompanying proposed ordinance be passed through first reading with Councilors Lee and Pereira absent and not voting. This is a miscellaneous traffic ordinance.
Motion to pass through first reading would be
Motion so made.
appropriate, made by Counselor Peckham,
Second.
seconded by Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The Committee on Ordinances and Legislation at a meeting held on June 3rd voted unanimously to recommend that the accompanying proposed ordinance be passed through first reading as amended with Councilors Lee and Pereira absent and not voting. This is the floodplain district ordinance.
Motion to pass through first reading enrollment?
Motion to pass through first reading as amended has been made by Counselor Kilby.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The Committee on Ordinances and Legislation at a meeting held on June 3rd voted unanimously to recommend that the accompanying proposed ordinance be passed through first reading as amended with Counselor Lee absent and not voting. This was the structures on and over a public way.
Motion to pass through first reading as amended.
Motion to pass through
Second.
first reading as amended has been made by Counselor Dion, seconded by Counselor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The Committee on Ordinances and Legislation at a meeting held on June 3rd voted unanimously to recommend that the accompanying resolution be granted leave to withdraw with Counselor Lee absent and not voting. This resolution related to the outdoor dining and seating for restaurants.
Motion to adopt the report?
Motion
Second.
to adopt the report to give the item leave to withdraw, made by Counselor Kilby, seconded by Counselor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Brief recess?
Can I, before, Mr. President, before we go, just on the resolution for after, can we just ensure that, because part of the, I guess, the conversation and discussions were that Ken Fiola was taking over or was going there temporarily, so if we can make a determination or find out how accurate that information is, and is it with Mr. Fiola personally, or is it with the Bristol County Economic Development Consultants Group, or, and how long it's for, is it, you know, and how much the contract's for and things of that nature. I'd like to make sure that that's included. And then, as an aside to that, I think part of the appointments that are coming down are really just resumes. If you can communicate to the mayor, if we could have, and I know Mr. McCoy's here, but even if we can have, you know, just a one-page letter or even a paragraph just explaining why the individual is being appointed, what they think that they'll be bringing to the table, things of that nature, so that when we're looking at it, we know it's a good fit for these various boards and committees.
Madam Clerk, going forward, when you get the appointments from the mayor, please make sure it comes with a cover letter with a reason for the appointment and why he feels that the appointment is worthy and necessary to that specific board. Is it the will of the council for recertifications, or do you want that just for new appointments?
I'd say just for new appointments coming
No,
through.
that's fine. Fair enough. Madam Clerk, just going forward, before we add these items on the agenda, just set that threshold, if you may. Before we introduce this final resolution, we're going to do a 2-minute recess, just to sign some ordinances. 2-minute recess. Fall River City Council meeting is now back in order. Madam Clerk.
Mr. President, we have the two ordinances for final ordination. The first is the solid waste.
Motion to pass through final ordination.
Motion, so moved.
Second.
Made by Councilor Kilby.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
And the second being miscellaneous traffic.
Motion to pass through final
Motion
ordination
made.
has been made by Councilor
Second.
Kadim, seconded by Councilor Lee. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Motion to
And
adjourn.
last-
Nope.
we got one more.
Second.
Nope,
One more thing.
nope, not entertaining that motion. Not yet.
We'll wait.
Whereas there have been numerous questions regarding the appointments to the Port Authority, and whereas there are also questions regarding the operations at the State Pier, now therefore be it resolved that the administration be invited to a future meeting of the Committee on Finance to provide an overview of the duties of the members of the Port Authority and the State Pier.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to
Made
adopt.
by Councilor Peckham, seconded by
Second.
Councilor Lee. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
That's all we have, Mr. President.
Motion to
To
adjourn.
adjourn has been made by Councilor Pereira, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion. Can't have any. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Good night.